If you don't subscribe to the channel, all the stories will happen to you. Get ready for the nightmare. The sun dipped below the horizon as I arrived at my Airbnb for the weekend, a charming little cottage nestled at the edge of a quiet town, surrounded by towering trees that whispered secrets in the evening breeze. I was looking forward to a much-needed escape, a chance to recharge and escape the stresses of everyday life. Little did I know, this getaway would become a descent into an unsettling mystery. As I stepped inside, the door creaked ominously, a sound that sent a shiver down my spine. The interior was cozy, adorned with vintage decor that spoke of a bygone era. I took a deep breath, letting the scent of aged wood and lavender wash over me. The living room featured a plush sofa and a small fireplace, while the kitchen was equipped with all the essentials. Everything felt just right, until I caught sight of the closet at the end of the hallway. It was an ordinary-looking door, painted a muted blue that matched the cottage's rustic charm. But something about it felt off. Maybe it was the way it seemed to absorb the light, or perhaps it was the unsettling silence that surrounded it. I brushed the thought aside, reminding myself that I was here to relax. Yet, as I settled in, I couldn't shake the feeling that the closet held secrets waiting to be uncovered. After unpacking my bags, I decided to explore the surrounding area. The quaint town beckoned with its promise of quaint shops and local eateries. But even as I wandered through cobblestone streets lined with charming houses, my mind kept drifting back to that closet. What could be hidden behind that door? When I returned in the evening, the atmosphere had shifted. The shadows deepened, and the once cozy cottage felt eerily still. I tried to push the unease aside, opting to make a cup of tea and curl up on the sofa with a book. But my eyes kept darting to the hallway, the closet standing like a sentinel, waiting for my attention. As I sipped my tea, the wind picked up outside, howling through the trees, creating an unsettling symphony of creaks and groans throughout the house. It was as if the cottage were alive, whispering tales of its past. I felt drawn to the closet, an inexplicable urge compelling me to uncover its mysteries. Finally, I set my cup down and stood up, my heart pounding as I walked toward the closet. I reached for the knob, hesitating for just a moment. The silence was deafening. With a deep breath, I turned the handle and pulled the door open. Inside was a small space, dimly lit by a flickering light bulb hanging from the ceiling. I could barely make out the items within: a few dusty coats, a stack of old boxes, and what looked like an old trunk resting in the corner. The air was thick with the smell of mildew, and I could see cobwebs clinging to the corners, suggesting that this closet hadn't been opened in ages. Curiosity got the better of me, and I stepped inside, the door creaking ominously behind me. The moment I crossed the threshold, I felt a chill wash over me, a sensation that made my skin crawl. I scanned the interior, my flashlight beam revealing faded photographs tucked haphazardly in one of the boxes. I reached down to examine them. The pictures were old, capturing moments that seemed frozen in time. There were images of a family, smiling faces, children playing in a yard, and a couple embracing in front of the very cottage I was staying in. But as I flipped through the stack, a sense of foreboding settled in my stomach. The last few photographs were different. They showed the same family, but the expressions on their faces had shifted from joy to fear. I turned my attention to the trunk, my pulse quickening as I approached it. It was weathered and locked, a heavy brass padlock securing it shut. A sense of dread gnawed at me as I reached out to touch the trunk's surface. Something about it felt wrong, as if it were a portal to a dark past that had been carefully hidden away. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from outside, startling me and causing me to stumble backward. The door to the closet swung shut with a force that sent a shiver down my spine. I quickly scrambled to open it, my heart racing. What was happening? Why did I feel as though I was being watched? As I finally managed to pull the door open, I was met with a chilling sight. The living room was dark, the only light coming from the flickering street lamp outside. It felt as though the cottage had transformed into a different entity, one that no longer welcomed me. I stepped out, shutting the closet door behind me, my mind racing with questions. The night stretched on, filled with an unsettling energy that clung to the air. I decided to distract myself with another cup of tea, but as I brewed the water, my thoughts kept drifting back to the trunk. What secrets lay inside? Why had the atmosphere shifted so drastically? Unable to resist the pull of curiosity, I returned to the closet, feeling an adrenaline rush as I gripped the lock on the trunk. I needed to know what was hidden within. I glanced around the dimly lit space, feeling an irrational sense of urgency. It was as if the air itself was charged with anticipation, urging me to act. I searched the other boxes for something, anything that might help me open the trunk. In the corner, I spotted an old keychain that had once belonged to the owner of the cottage. My heart raced as I grabbed it, wondering if it could possibly fit the lock. I approached the trunk again, feeling both terrified and exhilarated. With trembling hands, I inserted the key into the lock. It turned with surprising ease, and the padlock clattered to the ground. I slowly lifted the trunk lid, and an overwhelming smell of decay hit me, causing me to recoil slightly. Inside lay a jumble of old clothes and objects that appeared to have been left behind long ago. But among them was something that sent a chill down my spine, a diary, its pages yellowed and fragile. I pulled it out gently, my heart pounding in my chest. As I opened it, the pages whispered secrets of the past, filled with scrawled notes and hurried entries. The handwriting was erratic, a reflection of a mind unhinged. I began to read, each line pulling me deeper into a story of despair and fear. The entries spoke of a family's downfall, detailing disturbing events that had unfolded within these very walls. Accounts of strange noises, glimpses of shadowy figures, and the feeling of being watched filled the pages. My pulse quickened as I realized this family had been tormented by something sinister, something that lingered even now. As I read on, I stumbled upon a chilling revelation. The previous occupants had claimed that a malevolent spirit haunted the cottage, preying on their fears and manipulating their lives. The entries grew increasingly frantic, detailing a night when the family had finally vanished without a trace, leaving behind only these haunting words. I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. This was no ordinary cottage. It was a vessel of sorrow and loss. I could almost feel the weight of the tragedy pressing down on me, suffocating my thoughts. But even as panic rose within me, an unsettling determination took hold. I had to know what had happened to them. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper, barely audible, yet unmistakable. "Help us, find us." The words echoed in the stillness, chilling me to the core. My instincts screamed at me to flee, to escape the cottage and the dark history it contained. But curiosity held me captive. I couldn't leave without uncovering the truth. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The diary offered clues, breadcrumbs leading deeper into the mystery. It was time to confront whatever darkness lingered within these walls and discover the terrifying truth hidden in my Airbnb closet. The atmosphere in the cottage felt heavier now, thick with an unshakable tension. I placed the diary on the small table in the living room, my hands trembling slightly as I flipped through the pages once more. The entries detailed bizarre occurrences that had plagued the family over the years. But it was the final entry that truly gripped me. A frantic scrawl that spoke of a hidden room, a place where the family had once tried to escape the torment of the entity that haunted them. My heart raced. A hidden room? Could it be connected to the closet? I felt an urgent need to uncover the truth, to confront whatever malevolence resided within these walls. I stood up, determined to search for any signs of this elusive space. The cottage was modest in size, but I scoured every corner, every inch of the rooms, searching for clues. I examined the walls, tapping here and there to see if any hollow sounds echoed back. As I explored, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the floor, creating an eerie play of light and dark. In the corner of the living room, I noticed a section of the wall that seemed slightly different from the rest. The wood appeared older, worn, and the paint was chipped in an unusual pattern. I approached it cautiously, running my fingers along the edges. My pulse quickened as I pressed against it. To my surprise, a section of the wall gave way, revealing a narrow gap that opened into darkness. I had stumbled upon something hidden, something that had long been concealed. I grabbed a flashlight from my bag, illuminating the dark passageway that seemed to beckon me forward. With a mixture of fear and excitement, I stepped through the opening, the air growing colder as I entered the narrow space. The walls were damp, the smell of mold filling my nostrils. I shined the flashlight around, revealing a small, dimly lit room, bare except for a single, dusty chair in the center and a faded rug beneath it. I stepped closer, feeling an unsettling energy radiate from the chair. It was as if it held the weight of countless secrets, a witness to the horrors that had unfolded in this cottage. My heart raced as I scanned the room for any signs of the family mentioned in the diary. The walls were bare, save for one spot where a patch of wallpaper was peeling away, revealing a dark stain beneath it. I moved closer, the beam of my flashlight illuminating the area. The stain appeared to be old, but fresh enough to evoke a sense of dread. Was it blood? My stomach churned at the thought. In that moment, a sudden chill ran down my spine, and I felt a presence behind me. I whipped around, shining my flashlight into the darkness, but there was nothing there, only shadows and silence. Panic set in, but I knew I had to push through. The answers I sought were just beyond my grasp. Returning my focus to the room, I searched for anything that might reveal more about the family. On the floor, I noticed an old, dust-covered box tucked against the wall. Kneeling down, I carefully lifted the box and opened it, revealing a collection of trinkets, broken toys, faded photographs, and a small, tarnished locket. I picked up the locket, feeling its weight in my palm. It was intricately designed, depicting a family scene. I carefully opened it, revealing a small, faded picture of a woman and two children, their smiles bright and carefree. But beneath that image was a shadowy figure lurking in the background, a presence that seemed to overshadow their joy. A shiver coursed through me. Suddenly, the air grew thick, and I could hear faint whispers echoing in the confines of the hidden room. "Help us! Help us!" The voices were distant yet urgent, and my heart raced. I needed to uncover what had happened to these souls, to understand their pain, and ultimately put their spirits to rest. With renewed determination, I stood up and began to examine the walls of the room. Perhaps there were more hidden compartments or clues. My fingers brushed against the peeling wallpaper, and as I pulled at it, I felt the wall shift slightly. A hollow sound resonated as I pressed against it, and a section of the wall creaked open. Inside was another box, larger and more ornate than the first. I hesitated only for a moment before opening it, revealing a collection of journals. More entries chronicling the family's life in the cottage, detailing their descent into fear and madness. I scanned the pages frantically, searching for answers. As I read, I discovered that the family had been plagued by nightmares, vivid and terrifying visions that seemed to draw from their darkest fears. They wrote about an entity that tormented them at night, whispering their secrets and fears back to them in a twisted game of terror. The final entries spoke of a desperate attempt to escape, to find peace, but they were thwarted at every turn. The chilling realization struck me. The family had been trapped, not only by the physical walls of the cottage, but by something far more insidious. The entity that haunted them had fed on their fear, growing stronger with each passing day. Suddenly, I felt a sharp chill in the air, as if the temperature had dropped drastically. A loud crash echoed from the main room, startling me. My instinct screamed at me to flee, but I couldn't leave yet, not without understanding the full story. I steeled myself and moved cautiously toward the entrance of the hidden room, peering into the darkness beyond. The living room was eerily quiet, the atmosphere heavy with an oppressive energy. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I needed to uncover the truth. I stepped out of the hidden room, closing the wall behind me, the latch clicking softly into place. The air felt charged as I moved back into the living space. I sensed a presence in the room, an unseen force that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. The shadows shifted, and I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a figure lingering just beyond the edge of my vision. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice steady despite the fear gripping my chest. There was no answer, just silence that seemed to envelop me. I moved cautiously toward the source of the noise I had heard earlier, my heart pounding in my ears. As I rounded the corner into the living room, I froze. The front door was ajar, swinging slightly as if someone had just slipped out. I rushed to the entrance, but there was no one in sight, only the darkness of the night, thick and oppressive. Panic surged within me, a mixture of fear and confusion. Had someone entered the cottage? Or had it been a figment of my imagination, a manifestation of the fears I had uncovered? The sense of being watched loomed over me, and I knew I couldn't remain idle. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I made my way back to the table where I had placed the diary, the locket, and the other trinkets I had discovered. Maybe there was something in the writings that could help me understand what had happened, something that could lead me to uncover the truth behind the family's fate and the entity that haunted this place. As I flipped through the diary once more, a particular passage caught my eye. It spoke of a night when the family had encountered the spirit directly, a night filled with screams and terror. They had tried to confront it, but instead, it had led them into the hidden room where they could no longer escape its grasp. The chilling words sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't ignore the connection between the hidden room, the entity, and the fate of the family. I had to confront whatever was haunting this cottage, to face the darkness that had taken hold of their lives and now threatened mine. With renewed determination, I decided to prepare myself for whatever lay ahead. I gathered the diary, the locket, and a few other items, ready to delve deeper into the mystery. As the wind howled outside, I steeled my resolve. It was time to confront the terrifying discovery that awaited me in my Airbnb closet. As I braced myself for what lay ahead, the tension in the air grew palpable. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows and creating an unsettling soundtrack to the evening's events. I knew I needed to confront the entity that had haunted the family and now threatened me. The time had come to face the darkness head-on. With the flashlight in one hand and the diary in the other, I stepped back into the hidden room. The faint, musty scent filled my nostrils, a reminder of the secrets that had been buried for so long. I scanned the walls again, searching for any other hidden compartments or clues that could provide insight into the spirit's true nature. As I read through the diary entries, I noticed a recurring theme. The family had experienced a sense of being watched, a feeling that they were never alone. Their dreams were invaded by a shadowy figure, whispering their fears and secrets. This entity fed off their despair, growing stronger as the family became increasingly isolated. With each revelation, my heart raced. It was clear that this was not just a simple haunting. It was something far more sinister. I had to gather my courage and be prepared for anything. I would not let fear dictate my actions. I stood in the center of the hidden room, focusing on the space around me. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice steady despite the dread creeping into my chest. "Show yourself." The room fell silent, and for a moment, I thought I might have imagined it all. The whispers, the shadows. But just as I began to doubt myself, the temperature dropped sharply, and I felt a chilling breeze sweep through the room. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, its beam flickering as if responding to the unseen presence. Suddenly, a figure materialized in the corner of the room. It was faint, almost transparent, yet its form was unmistakable, a woman with hollow eyes and a sorrowful expression. Her mouth moved as if she were trying to speak, but no sound escaped her lips. "Who are you?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Are you the spirit haunting this place?" The figure nodded slowly, a tragic look crossing her face. My instincts told me she was not malevolent, but trapped, just like the family before her. I sensed her pain, her desperation for release. "I need to help you," I said, stepping closer. "Tell me what happened. Why are you here?" The specter pointed toward the diary on the floor, and as I glanced down, I noticed an entry that I had overlooked earlier. It described a ritual, a desperate act undertaken by the family to rid themselves of the spirit. They had tried to summon her, hoping to communicate and find a way to break the cycle of torment. I felt a surge of urgency. If this woman was indeed the spirit of the family's tormentor, perhaps she was trapped here due to their failed attempts to communicate. I needed to understand what they had done wrong and how I could set her free. "Show me," I urged, feeling a connection to her sorrow. "Show me what I need to do." The woman's form shimmered, and suddenly, I was overwhelmed by a vision. I was standing in the living room, surrounded by the family as they performed the ritual. The room was filled with candlelight, the air thick with an incense that twisted and curled like the shadows. They were chanting, words that felt foreign yet familiar, a desperate plea for understanding. But the air turned heavy, charged with a malevolent energy as the entity manifested, twisting and writhing before them. The family's fear ignited something darker, and the spirit they sought to contact became enraged. The vision shifted, and I could see the spirit's face, twisted in anger and pain. It was a mirror of the woman before me. I realized then that this entity was once a part of the family, someone who had been betrayed and cast aside. Suddenly, the vision faded, and I was back in the hidden room, gasping for breath. The woman stood before me, her expression now one of understanding mixed with grief. I could sense that she had been trying to protect her family, but had become a victim of their fear. "I understand now," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You weren't the monster they thought you were. They were afraid of what they didn't understand." She nodded, tears forming in her spectral eyes. I realized that to help her, I needed to perform the ritual properly, to show her the compassion and understanding that had been lacking before. Gathering my thoughts, I reached for the diary, flipping to the pages detailing the original ritual. I would need to modify it, to infuse it with empathy and a genuine desire to connect rather than fear. I began to recite the words, pouring my heart into the incantation, hoping to bridge the gap between our worlds. As I spoke, the air thickened with energy, and the shadows around me twisted and swirled. The woman's form began to shift, becoming more defined as she stepped closer. I could feel her presence, the weight of her pain, and the longing for release. "Let me help you," I said, my voice firm yet gentle. "You don't have to be alone anymore. I understand your suffering. You can find peace." The room pulsed with energy, and I felt a surge of warmth enveloping us. The woman's expression softened, her features glowing with a light that emanated from within. The darkness that had once clung to her began to dissipate, replaced by a radiant aura of hope. In that moment, I knew we were connected, two souls intertwined in a desperate quest for understanding. I continued the ritual, focusing on the love and compassion that had been absent during her torment. With each word, I could feel the spirit's pain lifting, her sorrow transforming into something lighter. The air around us shimmered, and I could sense a profound change taking place. The energy shifted, and for the first time, the weight of despair that had hung over the cottage began to lift. As the final words left my lips, the room erupted in a brilliant light, enveloping us both. The woman looked at me, her eyes now filled with gratitude instead of sorrow. She nodded, and in that moment, I understood that she was ready to move on, to finally find the peace she had long sought. The light intensified, and I felt a rush of warmth wash over me, as if I had been granted a glimpse of a world beyond. And just like that, she began to dissolve into the light, her spirit breaking free from the chains that had bound her for so long. "I will remember you," I whispered, my heart swelling with emotion. "Thank you for trusting me." And then, just as quickly as she had appeared, she was gone. The hidden room fell silent, the air now calm and still. I stood alone, surrounded by the remnants of the past, yet I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. The oppressive darkness had lifted, and the cottage no longer felt like a prison. The echoes of sorrow that had lingered in the walls had finally faded, replaced by a soothing silence. I knew that I had helped not only her, but also the family who had once called this place home. As I made my way out of the hidden room, I felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The night was still dark outside, but there was a sense of hope that illuminated my path. I stepped into the living room, the flickering candlelight casting gentle shadows on the walls. I could still hear the whispers of the family, but now they were filled with gratitude instead of fear. The diary lay open on the table, its pages now filled with a new narrative, one of healing and understanding. With a deep breath, I closed the diary and prepared to leave the cottage. I had come seeking answers and had found something far more profound, a connection to the souls that had once dwelled within these walls. As I stepped outside, the moon shone brightly overhead, illuminating my path. I felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that I had made a difference. I had confronted the darkness and emerged victorious, carrying with me the stories of those who had been lost. But I also knew that the journey was far from over. There were more mysteries to uncover, more stories waiting to be told. And as I walked away from the cottage, I felt an urge to share what I had learned, to ensure that the past would never be forgotten. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over the cottage as I stepped away from the hidden room. Despite the newfound sense of relief, an unsettling feeling lingered in my chest. I had confronted the darkness, but the secrets of this place were far from fully unveiled. As I made my way through the living room, I noticed the atmosphere had shifted. The air felt lighter, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something crucial remained unaddressed. The family's diary had revealed a glimpse of the past, but there were still unanswered questions, particularly regarding the tragedy that had befallen the family and how it intertwined with the spirit I had encountered. With determination coursing through me, I returned to the living room, setting the diary on the table. I needed to dig deeper. I began retracing the family's history, piecing together the fragmented stories within the pages, hoping they would guide me to the final truth. Each entry resonated with emotion, detailing their lives, their struggles, and ultimately their despair. As I read, I discovered that the family had once been vibrant, full of love and laughter. But the shadows of tragedy loomed over them. The father, a hard-working man, had lost his job, sending the family spiraling into financial ruin. The mother's health deteriorated, and their once bright home became a shell of its former self. Isolation took root, festering into fear, as the family struggled to cope with their mounting troubles. One entry caught my eye. It described a night when they had attempted to escape the pain, seeking solace in each other. They had gathered around the dining table, candles flickering, and shared their fears and dreams. But in that moment of vulnerability, the shadow had struck, feeding on their sorrow and pushing them further into despair. "Is this how you became trapped?" I whispered, addressing the empty room, the shadows now almost palpable. "Was it your pain that created this darkness?" The silence felt heavy, yet I sensed an answer lingering in the air, a reminder that understanding was key to breaking the cycle of anguish. I could not let their story end in sorrow. I had to honor their struggle and acknowledge the love they once shared. Summoning all my courage, I closed my eyes and reached deep within myself, channeling the compassion I had felt for the spirit. "I acknowledge your pain," I said softly, allowing my voice to resonate through the room. "I honor your love. You are not alone. You never were." Suddenly, the temperature in the room shifted again. I could feel a presence, stronger this time, surrounding me. The air buzzed with energy, and I opened my eyes to see the shadowy figure reappear. It hovered near the fireplace, its form more solid than before, the hollow eyes now filled with sorrow and understanding. "Your family suffered," I continued, my voice steady despite the fear bubbling beneath the surface. "You were not the monster they believed you to be. You were lost, like them." The figure responded, its features becoming clearer. I could see the woman's face, the one I had encountered before, but there were also flashes of other faces, the father, the mother, and the children. They all looked at me, expressions filled with a mixture of pain and longing. "I can help you," I urged, desperation creeping into my tone. "Let me tell your story. Let me share your love." As if recognizing the sincerity in my words, the spirit stepped closer. The warmth enveloped me, a comforting embrace that seemed to dissolve the barriers between our worlds. I felt a connection that transcended time and space, a bridge built on understanding and compassion. In that moment, I understood what was required of me. To help them find peace, I needed to tell their story to the world, to ensure their love would not be forgotten, and to show that even in darkness, light could prevail. With renewed purpose, I opened the diary once more, my pen poised over the pages. I began writing, pouring my heart into the narrative. I chronicled their joys, their struggles, and the bond that had once united them. As I wrote, I could feel the energy shifting in the room, the spirits gathering around me, their presence growing stronger with each word. As the story unfolded, I incorporated the lessons they had learned through their hardship. I wrote about their love for one another, the moments of laughter shared despite their struggles, and the strength they found in unity. I acknowledged their pain, yet celebrated their resilience, ensuring that their story would echo beyond the confines of the cottage. As I finished the last sentence, a hush fell over the room. I looked up, and the spirits stood before me, their forms shimmering with a newfound light. The sorrow that had weighed them down seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of tranquility. "Thank you," I whispered, my heart swelling with emotion. "Your story will be told. You will not be forgotten." The spirits nodded in unison, their expressions now radiant. The darkness that had once enveloped them began to dissipate, replaced by a warm glow that filled the room. In that moment, I knew they were ready to move on, to finally find the peace they had long sought. As the light intensified, I felt a surge of energy enveloping me. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the warmth that washed over me. When I opened them again, the spirits had begun to dissolve into the light, their forms merging with the luminescence that filled the cottage. "I will remember you always," I called out, my voice choked with emotion. "You are free now." And with those final words, they vanished, leaving behind an overwhelming sense of peace. The air felt lighter, the darkness that had once permeated the cottage replaced by a soothing calm. I stood in the silence, the weight of their pain lifted, replaced by a newfound hope. With a deep breath, I stepped outside into the night. The moon illuminated my path, casting gentle shadows on the ground. I knew that the journey was not just about confronting the darkness. It was also about embracing the light that follows. As I walked away from the cottage, I felt a sense of fulfillment. I had honored their story, and in doing so, had brought healing not only to their spirits, but also to myself. I would carry their legacy with me, ensuring that the love they had shared would never fade. But the echoes of the past still lingered in my mind. I knew that the world was filled with stories waiting to be told, stories of love, loss, and redemption. And as I ventured into the night, I felt the pull of new mysteries, eager to uncover the secrets that lay ahead. The journey was far from over. It was only just beginning. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the dark events of the previous night. The sun streamed through my window, casting a warm glow over the room. As I sat on my bed, the events of the night before replayed in my mind like a vivid dream. The spirits had found peace, and I had fulfilled my promise to share their story. Yet, beneath the sense of accomplishment lingered a desire to ensure that their legacy would endure. I grabbed my laptop, eager to document everything I had experienced in that haunted cottage. As I typed, the words flowed easily. I recounted the family's history, the trials they had faced, and the love that had ultimately defined them. Each keystroke felt like a tribute to their memory, an acknowledgement that they had not been forgotten. The more I wrote, the more I felt the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. It wasn't just about honoring their memory. It was about raising awareness of the stories hidden in the shadows of our lives. I realized that many people suffered in silence, their stories lost to time, much like the family I had encountered. Finishing the article, I took a moment to reflect. My heart raced with anticipation, knowing that sharing their story could help others who might feel isolated in their struggles. I envisioned a community where people could share their experiences, uplift one another, and find solace in the shared understanding of hardship and healing. I decided to create a blog, a space dedicated to telling these stories, both mine and those of others who had faced darkness and emerged into the light. The thought ignited a fire within me. The idea of giving a voice to the voiceless, of shedding light on the hidden struggles of so many, felt like a calling. After setting up the blog, I published the article about the family, weaving in my personal reflections and the lessons I had learned from them. As I clicked publish, a sense of relief washed over me. I was no longer just an observer. I was a storyteller, a beacon of hope for those who felt lost. The response was overwhelming. Within hours, messages poured in from readers sharing their own experiences, some recounting similar encounters with spirits, others sharing their struggles with grief, loss, and isolation. I felt a profound connection to each of them, realizing that these stories were not just my own. They belonged to a larger tapestry of human experience. Encouraged by the feedback, I began to organize virtual meetups, creating a safe space where people could share their stories. Each session was cathartic, filled with laughter and tears as participants opened up about their experiences. The more we shared, the more we healed, and I witnessed the transformative power of vulnerability. Through these interactions, I became aware of another haunting story that had gone untold, one that involved my own childhood friend who had mysteriously disappeared years ago. Memories flooded back. The last time I had seen her, the laughter we shared, and the day she vanished without a trace. It was a chapter of my life I had buried deep, one I needed to confront. As the weeks passed, I felt an urge to delve into this unsolved mystery. I began reaching out to people from our past, old friends, teachers, even family members, seeking any clues that could lead me to the truth. Each conversation revealed new layers to the story, but the answers remained elusive. Driven by the desire to uncover the truth, I spent hours researching online, combing through old news articles and social media posts. I discovered that many in our town had been impacted by her disappearance, and as I unearthed their stories, I recognized a pattern. People had been afraid to speak out, silenced by fear and uncertainty. Determined to break this cycle, I began drafting another article, this time about my friend's disappearance. I wanted to shine a light on the unsolved mystery and encourage others to share what they knew. It was time to confront the shadows that had haunted not just me, but an entire community. After completing the article, I published it alongside a call to action. I urged anyone with information to come forward, emphasizing that no story was too small to share. As the days passed, I watched as comments and messages rolled in, each filled with snippets of memories and experiences tied to her life. One particular message caught my eye. A former classmate claimed to have seen my friend on the outskirts of town shortly after her disappearance. The details were vague, but they reignited a flicker of hope. I reached out to the classmate, setting up a time to meet. On the day of our meeting, I felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. What if this was a dead end? What if it led to more questions? But as I approached the cafe, a sense of determination filled me. I had to know the truth, no matter where it led. As we sat down, my heart raced. The classmate began recounting her memories of that day, and for the first time in years, I felt a spark of hope. The pieces were beginning to come together, and I realized that my friend's story was part of a larger narrative, a tale of resilience, connection, and the human spirit's refusal to be silenced. With every detail shared, the threads of the past intertwined with the present. I was no longer just telling stories. I was actively seeking justice for those who had been lost. And as I navigated this journey, I knew that the shadows would never fully disappear, but I was learning to embrace the light that followed. As I continued to uncover the truth about my friend, I felt empowered to inspire others to share their own stories. Together, we were building a community united by our experiences, turning pain into purpose. And with every voice raised, we illuminated the darkness that had long suffocated our stories, transforming them into tales of hope. In this newfound mission, I found my calling not just as a storyteller, but as an advocate for those who had been silenced. I knew that my journey was far from over, and with each step, I was determined to keep shining a light on the hidden stories that deserved to be told. With that resolve in my heart, I closed my laptop and stepped outside, ready to embrace the day. The sun shone brightly, and for the first time in a long time, the future felt full of promise. I was no longer just a witness to the darkness. I was a beacon of hope, ready to inspire change and honor the stories that needed to be heard. As the light faded into twilight, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the journey I had embarked on. I had discovered not only the power of storytelling, but also the profound impact of connection. My friend's story would not be buried in the shadows. It would rise alongside the countless others, each waiting to be shared. And in that moment, I realized that every story matters. Every voice deserves to be heard, and every soul lost in the darkness can find its way back into the light. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents. The dust motes danced lazily in the slanting afternoon light as I sifted through the remnants of my childhood in the attic of my family home. Boxes were strewn about, filled with forgotten treasures and relics of the past. It was a place both familiar and foreign, a sanctuary of memories that had long been tucked away. I was searching for something specific, a photograph that my mother had mentioned before she passed, one that was said to hold a mystery of its own. As I dug deeper into the clutter, my fingers brushed against something cold and smooth. Pulling it out, I discovered an old wooden box, its surface marred by age, but intricately carved with floral patterns. My curiosity piqued. I lifted the lid, releasing a musty scent that filled the air around me. Inside lay a collection of photographs, yellowed with time, each one a portal to a different era. I carefully examined each image, feeling a sense of nostalgia wash over me. There were snapshots of family gatherings, birthday celebrations, and candid moments that captured the essence of a simpler time. But as I flipped through the stack, one photograph caught my eye, a sepia-toned image that sent a chill down my spine. It depicted a family standing in front of a modest house, smiling faces frozen in time. My heart raced as I recognized the familiar features of my relatives, my grandmother, my mother, and even a distant uncle I barely remembered. Yet there was something unsettling about the photograph. In the corner stood a shadowy figure, partially obscured but undeniably present, lurking just outside the frame of the family's happiness. Intrigued and unnerved, I turned the photograph over, searching for clues about its origin. Scrawled in faded ink were the words, "Summer of '82, Family Reunion." I had never seen this picture before, and I couldn't fathom why my family had chosen to hide it away. The weight of the shadowy figure felt like an uninvited guest in a gathering of warmth and love. I decided to confront my mother about the photograph, though I knew she would not be able to shed light on it anymore. Instead, I reached out to my relatives, hoping to unearth some details about that fateful summer. After a few calls and messages, I was able to connect with my aunt, who had been at the reunion. Her voice was thick with emotion as she recounted memories from that day, but when I mentioned the photograph, her tone shifted. "Oh, that picture," she said slowly, as if the words were pulling at a long-buried secret. "We try to forget about it. It was just strange. Strange how..." I pressed, the urgency of my curiosity growing stronger. "There was an accident that day. A cousin got lost in the woods behind the house. And well, we never found him." Her voice trembled slightly, and I could hear the underlying tension in her words. After that, we decided to stop taking family photos. We didn't want to remember that day. The revelation sent a shiver down my spine. The shadowy figure, the accident, and the family's decision to shun the memories all felt intertwined, a tapestry woven with fear and regret. I had to know more. What happened to the cousin? Why had the photograph been hidden away? Determined to uncover the truth, I began to piece together the events of that summer. I spent hours researching, combing through old newspaper archives and family records, seeking any mention of the lost boy. I discovered his name, Lucas, a lively child with a penchant for adventure. He had vanished without a trace during what was supposed to be a joyful gathering. The more I dug, the more I uncovered unsettling details. Rumors circulated in our small town about the woods behind the house, tales of strange occurrences and ghostly sightings. Some claimed to have seen the spirits of lost children wandering through the trees, forever searching for a way home. As I continued my investigation, I felt an inexplicable pull toward the photograph, as if it were a map guiding me through the dark corners of my family's history. The shadowy figure loomed large in my mind. Who were they, and what connection did they have to Lucas's disappearance? Determined to face the mystery head-on, I decided to visit the location where the family reunion had taken place. The house still stood, a relic of the past nestled among the towering trees. The air was thick with a sense of history, the whispers of generations echoing through the branches. As I approached, I felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. What if the truth was more unsettling than I imagined? Stepping onto the property, I felt as if I were walking into a living memory, a place where laughter had once echoed, but had since been overshadowed by sorrow. I walked around the house, my heart racing with each step. The woods loomed behind it, dark and foreboding, a stark contrast to the sunlight filtering through the leaves. I ventured toward the tree-line, an instinct pulling me deeper into the shadows. The atmosphere shifted as I moved further in, the sounds of the outside world fading away. An eerie silence enveloped me, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of distant birds. My skin prickled with unease, but I pressed on, determined to find answers. Suddenly, a movement caught my eye. I turned, my breath hitching in my throat. There, among the trees, stood a figure, a small child with tousled hair and a playful grin. My heart leapt, a flicker of hope igniting within me. Could this be Lucas? Had he been trapped in this liminal space all these years? But as I took a step closer, the figure vanished, dissolving into the shadows. I stumbled back, disoriented, confusion and fear swirling within me. Was it a trick of the light, or had I seen something real? I stood there, heart pounding, grappling with the implications of what I had witnessed. The truth about the photograph, the family secrets, and the ghostly apparition collided in my mind, each piece a fragment of a larger puzzle that I was desperate to solve. The photograph weighed heavily in my pocket, a silent reminder of the mysteries yet to unfold. I had embarked on a journey that would lead me deeper into the unsettling truths of my family's past, and I knew I had to continue uncovering the story, no matter how chilling it might be. As I left the woods that day, I felt the weight of the past resting on my shoulders. The shadowy figure in the photograph, the whispers of lost souls, and the unsettling truth about Lucas all beckoned me to return. I was determined to follow this thread, no matter where it led. The darkness of my family's history was about to be illuminated, and I was ready to face whatever horrors lay ahead. The weight of my discoveries pressed heavily on my mind as I returned home. Each step felt like a reluctant march into the unknown, the remnants of my childhood now shadowed by a dark legacy. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the day, the photograph, and the ghostly figure that had disappeared before my eyes. As the hours dragged on, I finally succumbed to sleep, but my dreams were far from peaceful. I found myself wandering through the woods behind the house, the path obscured by thick fog. The air was thick and damp, and an eerie silence enveloped me. Then, through the mist, I caught sight of the figure again, the child with the same playful grin, beckoning me closer. "Come play with me," the voice chimed, sweet and innocent, yet laced with an undertone of something darker. I reached out, desperate to bridge the distance, but the figure danced away, leading me deeper into the woods. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the very earth were trying to hold me back. Just as I was about to reach the child, I woke with a start, heart racing and breathless. The next morning, I decided to return to the scene of my previous encounter. I had to know if I could find any traces of Lucas or any clue that might connect the photograph to the present. Armed with my camera and a notebook, I set off, determination coursing through my veins. As I entered the woods, the sunlight broke through the canopy, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. It felt different this time, charged with an energy that made my skin tingle. I moved cautiously, aware of every rustle and shift in the underbrush. My first stop was the spot where I had seen the figure. I stood still, scanning the area for any signs of movement or remnants of the past. But all I found was silence, interrupted only by the occasional call of a distant bird. I decided to explore further, driven by an unyielding sense of urgency. I made my way deeper into the woods, where the trees grew taller and the light dimmed. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a small clearing. In the center stood an old swing set, rusted and covered in vines, an eerie remnant of a childhood long forgotten. As I approached, a chill ran down my spine. The swings creaked slightly, swaying as if they had just been disturbed. I paused, sensing that I was not alone. The air thickened around me, charged with an inexplicable energy. I took out my camera, snapping a few photos of the dilapidated swings. Suddenly, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of laughter, echoing through the trees. My heart raced as I turned toward the sound, half expecting to see Lucas standing there, but the clearing was empty. "Hello," I called, my voice trembling slightly. No response, just the rustling of leaves and the gentle creak of the swing set. Determined not to be deterred by fear, I pressed on. As I continued my exploration, I stumbled upon an old, half-buried box. It was small and covered in dirt, but something about it drew me in. I knelt down, brushing away the soil to reveal a faded red surface. My pulse quickened as I pried it open, revealing a collection of trinkets, old marbles, a broken toy car, and a faded photograph of a group of children playing. Among them, I recognized Lucas, his bright smile unmistakable. Yet, the photograph held an unsettling detail. Standing behind him was the same shadowy figure from the family photo, its features obscured but unmistakably there, watching from the edge of the frame. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Why had this figure been following Lucas? What connection did it have to the playful innocence of childhood? I took a moment to gather my thoughts, realizing that I was standing on the precipice of something monumental, yet terrifying. With my heart racing, I decided to return home and share my findings with my aunt. Maybe she would recognize the significance of the photograph and shed more light on the mysteries surrounding Lucas's disappearance. I gathered my things and left the clearing, casting one last glance at the swing set. The laughter echoed faintly in my mind, an invitation and a warning all at once. Later that evening, I visited my aunt. She welcomed me with a warm hug, but I could see the flicker of concern in her eyes as I described my day's discoveries. When I pulled out the photograph and the trinkets from the box, her expression shifted from curiosity to shock. "Where did you find these?" she asked, her voice tight. "In the woods, near the old swing set," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. "And look, Lucas is here, but so is that shadowy figure. What does it mean?" She took the photograph, her hands trembling slightly as she examined it. This is more than I realized. The swing set belonged to Lucas. He would play there all day, laughing and running. But after he disappeared, we never returned. We thought it was too painful. Why didn't anyone tell me? I need to know what happened that day. I pressed, desperation creeping into my voice. She sighed, her gaze drifting to the window as if searching for answers in the night sky. There were rumors about that day. Some said Lucas saw something in the woods, something he shouldn't have. Others claimed he heard a voice calling him, luring him deeper into the trees. I always thought they were just stories, but what? I urged, feeling the tension build in the air. But I think we may have buried the truth, hoping it would fade away like the shadows of that day. She said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You must be careful. The woods hold secrets we may not want to uncover." The weight of her words settled heavily in my chest. I felt as though I had stepped into a world where the past and present collided, where Lucas's laughter was intertwined with an unsettling silence. The journey ahead promised to be fraught with danger, but I was determined to unearth the truth. That night, as I lay in bed, the photograph lay on my nightstand, illuminated by the moonlight streaming through my window. The shadowy figure seemed to watch me, a guardian of secrets yet to be revealed. I closed my eyes, feeling the pull of the woods drawing me back into their embrace. The laughter echoed in my mind, and I knew I was destined to follow it, no matter where it led. As dawn broke, I felt a sense of resolve. The truth was waiting, hidden in the heart of the woods, and I was ready to face whatever horrors lay ahead. The whispers of lost souls were calling, and I was determined to answer. The morning light spilled through my window, illuminating the photograph that had become a haunting presence in my life. As I prepared to return to the woods, I felt an unsettling mix of anticipation and dread. I had to understand what Lucas had seen that day, what had lured him into the depths of the forest, and why the shadowy figure lingered in the edges of my memories. After breakfast, I grabbed my backpack, stuffing it with the essentials: water, a flashlight, my notebook, and the photograph. With each step toward the woods, my heart raced, the air thick with an impending sense of discovery. I was no longer just a curious observer. I was a seeker, chasing down the threads of a mystery that had haunted my family for years. As I entered the woods, the familiar path seemed different, almost foreboding. The trees stood taller, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers against the gray sky. I moved cautiously, the sound of leaves crunching beneath my feet echoing through the stillness. With each step, the laughter from my dreams echoed in my mind, guiding me deeper into the heart of the forest. Arriving at the clearing with the swing set, I paused, taking in the scene. The swing swayed slightly in the breeze, the air thick with a sense of waiting. I felt a chill run down my spine, an instinctual warning urging me to turn back, but I pressed on. I needed to know. I decided to retrace my steps, searching for the half-buried box I had discovered the previous day. The clearing was still, and as I dug through the soil where I had found it, a sense of urgency washed over me. I needed to uncover more. Answers lay buried here, just waiting for me to uncover them. Suddenly, a rustle broke the silence, and I turned sharply, heart pounding. Standing at the edge of the clearing was a figure, a child, with bright eyes and tousled hair. It was unmistakably Lucas. "Lucas!" I shouted, unable to believe what I was seeing. I took a step forward, my voice trembling. "Where have you been? What happened to you?" But the child only smiled, an enigmatic expression that sent shivers down my spine. He didn't speak, but gestured toward the trees, beckoning me to follow. Without thinking, I dashed after him, my mind racing with questions. We navigated through the underbrush, and I felt a strange sense of familiarity in the way he moved, as if he knew every secret path. The woods closed in around us, shadows creeping closer as we ventured deeper. Eventually, we arrived at a small pond, its surface still and reflective, framed by ancient trees. Lucas stopped at the water's edge, turning to face me. "Why did you come?" he asked, his voice echoing oddly in the air. "I want to know what happened to you, Lucas. We've missed you. Everyone's worried," I replied, my heart racing as I searched his face for clues. "Worry? They didn't understand," he said, his tone shifting, a hint of darkness creeping into his voice. "I had to play, but then I found something I shouldn't have." "Something? What was it?" I pressed, the urgency in my voice rising. He pointed to the water. "The secrets are in there. You have to look." I approached the pond cautiously, peering into its depths. The reflection of the trees danced on the surface, but below, I glimpsed flickering shadows. My heart raced. Could this be where he had disappeared? As I leaned closer, a sudden rippling disrupted the surface, and a distorted face emerged, a pale visage with hollow eyes, mouth stretched in a silent scream. I stumbled back, gasping. "Lucas, what is that?" I cried, fear clawing at my insides. He looked at me with a sadness that felt ancient. "That's what I found. It wants to play too. It wants to be free." Before I could respond, the water surged, and Lucas began to fade, the edges of his form blurring as he looked back at me one last time. "You have to find the truth. It will help you understand." And just like that, he was gone, leaving me standing alone at the water's edge, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt a mix of loss and determination swell within me. Whatever had taken him was still here, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for someone to confront it. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had come too far to turn back now. I needed to discover the truth, to understand the connection between the shadows and the water and the chilling tales of my childhood. Turning away from the pond, I searched the clearing for anything that might hint at the nature of the secrets buried within these woods. As I moved through the foliage, I noticed an area where the ground was uneven, almost as if something had been disturbed. I knelt down, brushing aside leaves and debris to reveal a set of stones, arranged in a small circle. Curiosity piqued, I began to clear the area, revealing more stones. As I worked, I felt a sense of urgency. This was more than just a pile of rocks. It was a structure of sorts, perhaps a forgotten gathering place for children in a long-gone time. Once I had cleared the stones, I saw it, a small wooden box, intricately carved but weathered by time. My hands trembled as I pried it open, heart racing. Inside lay an assortment of trinkets, faded photographs, a rusted key, and a small diary, its cover tattered but still intact. I flipped through the diary, skimming its contents. It belonged to someone named Clara, dated back several decades. The entries spoke of childhood adventures, of laughter and games in the very woods I stood in now. But as I read further, the tone shifted. Clara began to write about shadows lurking in the trees, voices calling her name, and the fear that began to grip her friends. "Something is watching us," she wrote in one entry. "We hear it at night, whispering secrets we shouldn't know. I fear we are not alone." I felt a chill as I realized the connection. Clara's fear mirrored my own. The shadows had been here for generations, and Lucas had been drawn to them just like the children before him. The final entry sent a wave of dread through me. "I have to go back to the pond. I feel it calling me. I don't know what I will find, but I must know the truth." The final words hung in the air, heavy with foreboding. I knew I had to return to the pond, to face whatever lay beneath the surface. Clara's voice echoed in my mind, urging me onward. With the diary clutched tightly in my hands, I made my way back to the pond, the weight of the past bearing down on me. As I approached the water's edge, I could feel the shadows gathering, whispering promises of truths yet to be unveiled. The time had come to confront the darkness that had haunted Lucas, Clara, and now me. What would I find when I looked into the depths? The answers were waiting, but so were the shadows. With one last breath, I leaned forward, ready to uncover the terrifying truth that lay just beneath the surface. As I stood at the edge of the pond, the weight of the moment pressed heavily on my chest. The water rippled gently, reflecting the overcast sky, but beneath that serene surface lay a darkness that felt palpable. Lucas's last words echoed in my mind. "It wants to play." With resolve hardening within me, I crouched down, peering closer. The shadows danced just below the surface, teasing me with glimpses of something unknown. My heart raced, but I couldn't turn back now. I had to find out what had happened to Lucas and to uncover the truth of Clara's fears. I took a deep breath and reached out, my fingers just brushing the cool water. A jolt of energy surged through me, as if the pond itself was alive, pulling at me, urging me to delve deeper. I couldn't help but remember Clara's journal entry. The call of the pond was intoxicating, a siren's song echoing through the years. Suddenly, the water surged upward, as if responding to my presence. The ripples intensified, swirling around my hand, and before I knew it, I was drawn in. I stumbled forward, losing my balance as the world around me distorted. I felt myself falling, plunging into the water, the cold enveloping me like a shroud. For a moment, I flailed, panic rising as the surface above faded into darkness. But as I struggled, something extraordinary happened. I began to see. The water transformed from murky gloom to a vivid tableau of colors and shapes, a realm hidden from the world above. Strange figures danced just beyond my reach. Children, their laughter echoing through the depths. They moved with an eerie grace, their faces twisted in smiles that held secrets too dark to comprehend. Among them, I saw Lucas, his form clearer now, his expression both joyful and haunting. He turned to me, eyes shining, beckoning me to join them. "Lucas," I called out, but the words were lost in the water's embrace. The current pulled me deeper, drawing me toward the source of the laughter, the source of the mystery. Suddenly, a shadow loomed ahead, darker than the surrounding waters. It twisted and churned, taking shape as I drew closer. I could feel the weight of its gaze, the chill of its presence wrapping around me like a vice. The shadows twisted into a figure, grotesque and elongated, its features obscured yet somehow familiar. In that moment, a flood of memories washed over me. Images from Clara's diary intertwined with flashes of my childhood. I saw her playing in the woods, laughing with her friends, until the shadows closed in, whispering their sinister secrets. The laughter turned to screams, and I felt a surge of fear wash over me. The figure before me morphed into a dark version of Clara, her eyes hollow, her mouth stretched in a silent scream. "Help us," she mouthed, though no sound reached my ears. The plea hung in the water, heavy with despair. I struggled to swim closer, compelled by her desperate gaze. "What do you want? How can I help?" My voice echoed in the depths, filled with urgency. The dark Clara gestured toward the pond's bottom, where I could see remnants of what once was a forgotten playground, broken swings, and tattered dolls lost to time. I could feel the echoes of laughter mingling with cries for help, a cacophony of emotions crashing against my mind. Then, as if answering my unspoken question, the water shimmered, revealing a hidden door nestled in the mud below. Its edges were ornate, almost inviting, adorned with carvings that matched the diary's patterns. It pulsed with a strange energy, calling to me with promises of answers. With newfound determination, I kicked my legs and pushed myself down, my fingers grazing the cold surface of the door. It was locked, a heavy padlock rusted with age. "What lies behind you?" I whispered, urgency rising as I fumbled with the key I had found in Clara's box. The moment the key touched the lock, the water around me began to swirl violently. I braced myself, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The lock clicked open, and the door creaked, revealing a narrow passageway that extended into the darkness below. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open, the current tugging me inside. The tunnel was cramped, the walls damp and rough against my skin. I felt the shadows pressing in around me, their whispers echoing, urging me to turn back. But I couldn't. Lucas was somewhere ahead, along with the truth I so desperately sought. The passage twisted and turned, leading me into a dimly lit chamber. Flickering torches lined the walls, casting eerie shadows that danced across the stone surface. As my eyes adjusted, I could see figures trapped in the walls, their faces contorted in fear and anguish. "Help us," they cried, but their voices were drowned out by the relentless echo of the shadows. I was in a tomb of lost souls, a place where the past converged with the present, and the air grew thick with sorrow. I turned to the far wall, where an altar stood, adorned with trinkets, photographs, and remnants of lost childhoods. It was a shrine to the children who had disappeared, to Clara and Lucas, and others who had come before them. Among the items, I recognized Clara's photograph, young and carefree, surrounded by friends. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the frame, and suddenly the room filled with memories, the laughter of children blending with their cries. "Leave us," the shadows hissed, their forms swirling around me, filling the air with a sense of dread. "You should not be here." But I couldn't turn back. The key to their freedom was within my grasp. I focused on the altar, my heart pounding as I spotted a small wooden box sitting at its center. The box was intricately carved, reminiscent of the one I had found before. I opened it, revealing a collection of small trinkets, charms, pieces of broken toys, and another diary, this one belonging to Lucas. The words were shaky, scribbled in a hurried hand, detailing his descent into the woods, his encounters with the shadows, and the dark truths that lay beneath the surface. He wrote about the lure of the pond, how it promised adventure and escape, but concealed a terrible secret. The more he played, the more the shadows had tightened their grip, pulling him into a world where time stood still and freedom was a distant memory. "I want to come home," the final entry read, "but the shadows won't let me go." Tears streamed down my face as I grasped the diary tightly. "I'm here, Lucas. I'm going to bring you home." The shadows writhed around me, their whispers turning to screams. "You cannot save them. They are ours." With renewed determination, I searched for something, anything, that could help free the trapped souls. Among the trinkets, I found a small dagger, its blade gleaming in the dim light. The hilt was engraved with a symbol I recognized from the diary, a marking that seemed to pulsate with energy. I lifted the dagger, feeling its weight in my hand. This must be the key, I thought, realizing it was a tool meant to sever the ties between the shadows and the souls they had claimed. "Release them," I shouted, brandishing the dagger as I moved toward the nearest figure. With a swift motion, I plunged the dagger into the wall. The moment the blade pierced the surface, a blinding light erupted, illuminating the chamber as anguished cries filled the air. The shadows shrieked, twisting violently, their forms dissipating as the light surged. I felt a rush of energy as the souls began to emerge from the walls, their expressions shifting from fear to relief. "Thank you," they cried, voices melding into one, a chorus of gratitude that filled the chamber. As the last of the shadows melted away, I turned back to the altar, breathless. Lucas stood before me, his form shimmering in the light. "You did it," he exclaimed, a wide smile breaking across his face. "Lucas, you're free." I rushed forward, tears of joy streaming down my cheeks. He stepped closer, the warmth of his presence washing over me. "Thank you for finding me. I knew you would come." But even as I embraced him, a nagging sense of urgency tugged at me. "What about the others?" I asked, glancing around the now bright chamber. "Can we bring them back too?" Lucas nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "They're waiting for you. We have to lead them to the surface." Together, we reached for the remaining souls, helping them break free from their bonds. The air crackled with energy as they emerged, each one finding their footing, their faces lighting up with relief. As we all gathered at the altar, I realized the shadows were gone, but their presence still lingered, a reminder of the darkness we had faced. We needed to escape, to return to the surface and leave this haunted place behind. "Follow me," I urged, leading the way back through the passage. The light from the torches guided us as we moved quickly, the echoes of laughter now a comforting sound, growing stronger with each step. Finally, we reached the pond, its surface calm and inviting. The moonlight illuminated our path, and as we stepped forward, I felt a rush of warmth enveloping us. The pond had transformed, no longer a place of fear, but a gateway to freedom. "Thank you," Lucas said, his voice filled with gratitude as he stood at the water's edge. With one last look at the forest, I knew we had broken the cycle. The darkness would no longer claim innocent souls. We had emerged victorious, united by the bonds of friendship and courage. As we stepped into the water, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, knowing that together we had faced the darkness and emerged into the light. As the cool water lapped at our ankles, I could feel the weight of the night's events slowly lifting. The laughter of the freed souls surrounded me, a comforting chorus that whispered of hope and healing. We waded deeper, the moonlight shimmering on the surface, illuminating the path to our escape. Lucas turned to me, his expression a mixture of relief and wonder. "I didn't think we could break free," he said, his voice steady despite the enormity of what we had just experienced. "You saved us." "It wasn't just me," I replied, glancing at the other souls, now all safely gathered at the pond's edge, their faces reflecting gratitude and newfound hope. "We did this together." With each step we took, I could feel the shadows of the past receding, the memories of fear and despair fading like mist in the morning light. The pond, once a source of dread, now felt alive with possibilities, its depths shimmering with potential. As we reached the shore, I turned to the group, my heart swelling with a sense of responsibility. We need to find a way to remember those we lost and to keep the shadows from returning, I declared, feeling a surge of determination. "We can't let this happen again." The freed souls nodded in agreement, their expressions resolute. Clara stepped forward, her eyes filled with understanding. "We need to tell our stories," she said softly, "to share what we've been through, so others know the truth." "Yes," I replied, inspired by her words. "If we spread awareness, we can help others recognize the dangers and prevent anyone else from falling into the darkness." The group began to brainstorm ideas, sharing how we could reach out to the community. We spoke of creating a safe space where others could share their experiences, a place to educate and empower, ensuring that no one would ever feel alone in their struggles again. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, a sense of peace settled over us. The night's horrors felt distant, replaced by the promise of a new day and a fresh start. With the sun rising behind us, we made our way back through the woods, the air filled with the sounds of birdsong and the rustling of leaves. The world felt alive, vibrant, and welcoming, a stark contrast to the darkness we had just escaped. When we reached the edge of the forest, we paused, looking back at the pond. It gleamed in the sunlight, a tranquil mirror reflecting the sky above. I felt a pang of sadness for the darkness that had once inhabited this place, but also a sense of triumph. We did it, I whispered, my voice barely audible above the gentle breeze. We freed ourselves. As we stepped into the clearing, a sense of purpose filled the air. We were no longer just survivors. We were advocates, ready to share our stories and protect others from the same fate. Together, we would create a movement to ensure that the shadows would never claim another innocent soul. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. We would face skepticism, fear, and resistance, but we were armed with the truth and a shared resolve. I glanced at Lucas, Clara, and the others, their faces alight with determination. "Let's go," I said, my heart racing with excitement and hope. There's so much work to do, and we have a story to tell. With that, we set off toward the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the sun rose higher, casting warmth over the land, I felt a profound sense of belonging. The bonds we had formed in the depths of the darkness would guide us through the light, illuminating our path as we embarked on this new chapter together. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents. It started with a subtle whisper of change, a sensation that something was off in my otherwise tranquil apartment. I had moved in only a few months prior, excited to create a space that reflected my personality. The walls, freshly painted a soothing shade of blue, were meant to be a sanctuary. But soon, they would become the backdrop for a mystery that would unravel my sense of safety. One evening, as I settled into my routine after a long day at work, I noticed the first mark. It was faint, almost like a shadow cast on the wall, just beside the window where the light danced during sunset. I thought nothing of it at first, perhaps a trick of the light or a smudge I hadn't noticed during my move-in cleaning. I brushed it off and went about my evening, unaware of the strange occurrences that were about to unfold. Days passed, and the mark lingered, but it was soon joined by others, small, dark smudges appearing on various walls throughout my apartment. They crept in like whispers, subtle yet unnerving. At first, they were easy to ignore, just another quirk of an old building. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice a pattern. Each morning, I would wake to find the marks slightly different. Some faded, while new ones appeared. The marks seemed to grow, extending further down the walls, as if reaching out for something just beyond their grasp. I found myself staring at them, trying to decipher their meaning, but they offered no answers. Intrigued and a bit unnerved, I decided to document them. I took photographs, capturing the marks from various angles and in different lighting. I even began to sketch them, trying to make sense of the randomness that surrounded me. Each mark felt like a clue in a puzzle that had yet to reveal its purpose. One night, after a particularly exhausting day, I settled in a bed, exhausted. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the marks were somehow aware of my presence. The shadows in my room seemed to grow deeper, enveloping me in a cocoon of unease. I flipped on my bedside lamp, the light pushing back against the darkness, but the feeling lingered. Just as I was about to drift off, a soft thud echoed from the living room. My heart raced. I lay still, straining to hear anything further. The apartment was silent, save for the faint sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Gathering my courage, I slipped out of bed and tiptoed to the living room, the glow of the lamp trailing behind me like a beacon. As I stepped into the room, my breath caught in my throat. The marks on the walls had shifted. They seemed to be forming patterns now, spiraling inwards, as if leading me towards something hidden. I couldn't help but feel that they were trying to tell me a story, but the meaning eluded me. The flickering light cast eerie shadows, and for a moment, I thought I saw a figure darting in the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there, just the marks swirling and shifting in the dim light. Panic coursed through me, and I hurried back to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. My mind raced as I replayed the evening's events, searching for a logical explanation. Were the marks merely stains from previous tenants? Or was something more sinister at play? As I lay in bed, I felt a growing sense of dread. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone in the apartment, that the walls were hiding secrets, and that I needed to uncover them before they consumed me. The marks had vanished from my mind as mere stains. They had transformed into a mystery that beckoned for resolution. Little did I know this was just the beginning. The vanishing marks on my walls were only the first signs of a deeper enigma waiting to be uncovered, a tale woven into the very fabric of the apartment itself. And as I drifted off to sleep, I had no idea how much my life was about to change. The next morning, I awoke with a lingering sense of unease. The sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room, but it did little to chase away the chill that had settled in my bones. I pushed the blankets aside, steeling myself to face the day ahead. The marks remained etched in my mind, demanding my attention. As I prepared breakfast, I couldn't help but glance at the walls, searching for any sign of the marks that had appeared overnight. To my surprise, they seemed to have faded further, becoming even less distinct, almost as if they were playing a game of hide-and-seek. I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. It was as if I were chasing shadows that refused to be caught. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to do some research. After breakfast, I sat at my desk, the computer screen illuminating my face as I delved into the history of the building. It was an old structure, built in the early 1900s, with a rich past filled with stories of its former residents. I combed through online archives, hoping to find anything that might explain the strange occurrences. Hours passed, and I found snippets of information, former tenants, stories of the neighborhood, even a few ghost tales that sent shivers down my spine. But nothing specifically mentioned anything about marks or peculiar phenomena. Just as I was about to give up, I stumbled upon a blog dedicated to local hauntings. One entry caught my attention. A resident of my very building had reported hearing whispers emanating from the walls. The blogger claimed they felt an overwhelming presence, a sense of being watched that had driven them to move out within weeks. My heart raced as I read the account. It mirrored my own experiences far too closely. I felt compelled to reach out to the author, a woman named Sarah, who had shared her experiences. After a quick message detailing my own encounters, I sent it off and waited anxiously for her response. The day dragged on, each minute stretching into an eternity, with my mind constantly flickering back to the marks. That evening, I decided to conduct a little experiment. Armed with a flashlight and a notebook, I planned to inspect the walls more closely. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I turned off the main lights, allowing the beam from the flashlight to slice through the darkness. I moved through the apartment, illuminating each wall, searching for anything that might provide clarity. In the dim light, I began to see subtle variations in the paint, faint lines and shadows that seemed to shift as I moved. I paused, the hairs on my arms standing on end, as I felt a cool draft wash over me, chilling the air. Suddenly, I heard a soft rustling sound, like the whisper of fabric brushing against fabric. I froze, my heart pounding. The noise came from the living room. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and approached the doorway. The flashlight flickered as I stepped inside, illuminating the walls, which appeared to pulse with an eerie life of their own. Then I saw it, a shadow flitting across the wall, just at the edge of my vision. I swung the flashlight around, but there was nothing there. My breath quickened. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling slightly. Silence answered me, thick and oppressive. Just as I was about to dismiss it as my imagination, I noticed something on the wall. A mark had reappeared. This time, it looked like a handprint, smudged and faint, as though someone had pressed their palm against the wall, leaving behind a ghostly reminder. I stepped closer, feeling an inexplicable connection to it, a sense of urgency building within me. As I reached out to touch the mark, the room seemed to shiver. The air grew colder, and the whispers returned, faint but distinct, swirling around me. "Help us," they murmured, an echo that resonated deep within my chest. My heart raced, caught between fear and curiosity. Who were they? What did they want from me? In that moment, I realized that the marks were not just stains. They were a cry for help, a message from the past begging to be understood. I needed to uncover the story hidden within these walls, to find out what had happened to the souls that had come before me. With renewed determination, I backed away from the wall, promising myself that I would dig deeper, find answers, and perhaps even bring peace to whatever lingered in the shadows. I turned off the flashlight, feeling a sense of resolve wash over me. The marks might vanish, but I was determined to uncover the truth behind them, no matter how unsettling it may be. The whispers had sparked a fire within me, one that would not be easily extinguished. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't help but wonder what awaited me in the days to come. The mystery of the vanishing marks had only just begun, and I was ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. The following morning dawned gray and overcast, the clouds heavy with the promise of rain. As I sipped my coffee, I stared at the marks on the walls, contemplating their significance. The handprint lingered in my mind, a chilling reminder of the night before. I felt a sense of urgency. I needed to act before the marks faded away completely, taking their story with them. Determined, I set out to find more information about the building's history. I visited the local library, diving into old newspapers and property records. I was hoping to uncover tales of former residents, anything that might shed light on the whispers and marks that had plagued me. As I pored over dusty articles, a pattern began to emerge. I discovered that the building had housed several families over the decades, but one story stood out. A family of 4 had lived there in the late 1970s, a mother, father, and 2 young daughters. Tragedy struck when the youngest daughter disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The search for her had captured the town's attention, but she was never found. The family eventually moved away, leaving behind unanswered questions and a lingering sense of loss. With this newfound information, I felt a connection to the lost girl. It seemed her spirit might be tied to the apartment, the very walls mourning her absence. I returned home, filled with both dread and determination. The marks weren't just stains. They were a link to a past that demanded to be acknowledged. That evening, I decided to reach out to Sarah, the woman from the blog. I sent her another message, detailing the history I'd uncovered and asking if she had experienced anything similar during her time in the building. Within an hour, my phone buzzed with a reply. Sarah's response was both alarming and intriguing. She recounted her own experiences in the apartment, how she'd felt a strong presence, particularly in the living room, and how she too had noticed strange marks appearing on the walls. She mentioned having dreams about the lost girl, vivid images of a child playing in a garden that once flourished where the building now stood. The dreams were unsettling, and they had haunted her during her stay, ultimately prompting her to leave. As I read her words, a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't ignore the possibility that the girl's spirit was trying to communicate, to make her presence known. I decided that I would attempt to reach out to her, to understand what she wanted, and to offer whatever comfort I could. That night, I prepared for an intense session of introspection. I dimmed the lights, lit a few candles, and created a space that felt safe and inviting. I sat cross-legged on the floor of the living room, surrounded by the flickering glow of candlelight. With a notebook and a pen in hand, I began to write a letter to the lost girl. "Dear Emma," I wrote, feeling both foolish and sincere. "I know you're here, and I want to help you. I've learned about your family, and I can't imagine the pain you've endured. Please, if you can hear me, let me know what I can do." As I finished the letter, I felt a sudden chill in the air, and the flame of the candles flickered violently. I paused, holding my breath. For a moment, everything felt suspended in time. Then, I heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible, but unmistakably present. "Help!" My heart raced as I realized the voice was coming from the very wall I had been studying. I glanced toward it, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. This was the moment I had been waiting for, a chance to connect with the spirit trapped within these walls. I took a deep breath, my voice trembling. "Emma, are you here? Can you tell me what happened to you?" The room fell silent, and for a moment, I feared I had imagined the entire encounter. But then, I saw it. The handprint on the wall began to shift, darkening as if being pressed by an unseen force. The air crackled with energy, and the whispers returned, growing louder, more insistent. "Find me." It was a command, not a plea. I felt a wave of resolve wash over me. I would find Emma, and I would bring her story to light. But how? I needed to investigate further, to delve deeper into the history of the family and the events that led to her disappearance. With renewed determination, I reached for my phone and started searching for local records about the case. I found an old newspaper article detailing the day of Emma's disappearance. The article was sparse, but mentioned a small garden behind the building where she had been last seen. My heart raced at the thought. Perhaps there was something in that garden that still held the key to understanding her fate. As I made plans to visit the site the next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The whispers seemed to follow me, a haunting reminder that I was not alone. But this time, instead of fear, I felt a growing connection to the spirit of the girl. I was determined to uncover the truth behind the marks, the whispers, and the tragic fate of Emma. Tomorrow, I would face whatever awaited me in the garden, ready to confront the past and offer the help that had been so desperately sought for decades. The following morning, the sky hung heavy with ominous clouds, mirroring the weight on my shoulders. Armed with a flashlight, my notebook, and an inexplicable sense of purpose, I set off for the garden behind the building. The path leading there was overgrown and winding, a stark contrast to the neat, manicured lawns I had known in other neighborhoods. Each step felt like an echo of the past, the whispers in my mind urging me onward. As I approached the garden, I noticed it was enclosed by a rusty iron fence, its paint chipped and faded, the bars tangled with weeds. Pushing the creaking gate open, I stepped inside, feeling a shiver run down my spine. The garden was a ghost of its former self. Once vibrant, it now lay in ruin, overtaken by nature. Wildflowers peeked through the cracked soil, but the remnants of long-forgotten toys and a swing set swayed eerily in the wind, hinting at the laughter that once filled the air. I focused on the center of the garden where a large oak tree stood, its gnarled branches reaching skyward like fingers grasping for something just out of reach. My heart raced as I approached, drawn by an unseen force. I crouched near the base of the tree, where the roots twisted above ground, exposing dark, damp earth. This felt like a place where secrets were buried. I began to dig with my hands, my heart pounding with anticipation. The earth was surprisingly soft, yielding to my desperate touch. As I dug deeper, I unearthed something hard, a small, rusted tin box. The sight of it sent a surge of adrenaline through me. I brushed the dirt away, revealing intricate carvings on the box's surface. It seemed ancient, as if it had been waiting for someone to find it for decades. With trembling fingers, I opened the box. Inside lay a collection of small trinkets, a faded photograph of a smiling girl with long, dark hair, Emma, clutching a stuffed rabbit, a lock of hair tied with a fraying ribbon, and a tiny, silver locket. My heart sank as I recognized the familiar features of the girl in the photograph. The contents of the box felt like pieces of a broken puzzle, fragments of Emma's life waiting to be stitched together. As I held the locket, I felt an electric jolt. The air around me thickened, and I could hear the whispers more clearly now. "Help me, remember me." The urgency in her voice pierced through the garden's stillness. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the garden, rattling the leaves and chilling my bones. I looked around, feeling an overwhelming sense of being watched. I glanced at the tree, and for a brief moment, I could have sworn I saw a shadow dart behind it. A fleeting figure, no more than a glimpse. "Emma," I called out, my voice shaking. "Is that you?" The wind stilled, and a profound silence enveloped the garden, as if the world was holding its breath. In that moment, I felt an undeniable connection to the girl. She wanted to be remembered, to be found, not just by me, but by those who had loved her and had lost her. With renewed determination, I decided I would bring the box and its contents back home. I carefully placed everything back into the tin, sealing the lid. I knew I needed to return to my apartment and do further research, not just on Emma's disappearance, but also on the family who had lived there before me. As I walked back, the feeling of being followed returned. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone there, but the path remained empty. Still, I couldn't shake the sensation that I was not alone. It was as if Emma's spirit was walking beside me, guiding me to the truth. Once home, I laid out the items from the box on my dining table. The photograph of Emma smiling brought tears to my eyes. She looked so full of life, so innocent. I needed to honor her memory, to tell her story, and perhaps to find out what truly happened that day in the garden. With the locket and the photograph as my focus, I scoured online databases and local archives for any records related to the family. Hours turned into a blur as I lost myself in research, piecing together the fragmented history of the girl who had once been so full of promise. Eventually, I found a news article that detailed the aftermath of Emma's disappearance. Her family had been devastated, searching for answers in every corner of the town. The father became reclusive, unable to cope with the loss, while the mother remained hopeful until the very end. The last paragraph of the article struck me hard. Emma's family moved away a year after her disappearance, leaving behind an empty home filled with memories and questions. The pieces were coming together, but I still felt there was more to discover. The article mentioned that Emma's parents had tried to contact local psychics in their desperation, seeking closure and answers about their daughter. I decided to reach out to one of these psychics, hoping they could provide insight into the mystery that surrounded Emma. The following day, I made the call. The psychic was receptive, but she warned me about the emotional toll such connections could have. I understood the risks, but I was determined to seek the truth. I scheduled a meeting for the following week, hoping that the psychic would be able to communicate with Emma and help uncover the layers of this tragedy. As I prepared for the meeting, I felt both anxious and hopeful. I knew I was on the brink of something significant, a chance to bring closure not only to Emma's spirit, but also to her family's unresolved pain. I needed to be ready for whatever revelations might come. That night, I placed a photograph of Emma beside my bed. As I drifted off to sleep, I whispered a promise to her. I will find the truth. I will help you. The words hung in the air, a vow that resonated in the silence of my room. And as I closed my eyes, the whispers returned, softer now, laced with gratitude. Thank you. The day of the psychic meeting arrived, shrouded in an atmosphere of anticipation and unease. I barely slept the night before, replaying every detail in my mind, wondering what the session would reveal. I dressed carefully, feeling the weight of my mission pressing down on me. The locket and the photograph of Emma were tucked safely in my pocket, a source of strength as I prepared to confront whatever lay ahead. The psychic's office was located in a quaint, weathered building on the outskirts of town. The faint aroma of incense wafted through the air as I entered, a mixture of lavender and sage that felt both soothing and surreal. Dimly lit candles flickered in the corners, casting dancing shadows that made the room feel alive. A large round table sat in the center, covered with an assortment of crystals, tarot cards, and a small, ornate box. The psychic, a middle-aged woman named Claire, welcomed me with a warm smile. Her eyes, deep and knowing, seemed to pierce through the layers of my anxieties. I sense a strong presence, she said, her voice soft yet commanding. You're here for someone who has not found peace, aren't you? I nodded, swallowing hard. Yes, her name is Emma. She disappeared when she was a child, and I think her spirit is still lingering. Claire gestured for me to sit. As I settled into the chair, I felt a sudden chill, as if a draft had swept through the room. It was both unsettling and exhilarating. Let's begin, she said, closing her eyes and taking a deep breath. I watched as she entered a trance-like state, her features softening, a serene expression washing over her face. Moments passed in silence, the air thick with anticipation. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open, revealing a piercing clarity. Emma is here. She wants to speak with you. My heart raced. What does she want? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She wants you to know she is not angry, but she is afraid. She feels trapped, and there is something she needs to reveal. Something important about the day she vanished, Claire said, her voice shifting slightly as if channeling Emma's spirit. There are memories locked away that need to be unlocked. I felt a surge of emotion. What happened to her? I implored, desperate for answers. Claire's expression grew more intense. There was a man, a dark figure who watched her. He lurked in the shadows, waiting. She sensed him, but she was just a child. She didn't understand the danger. It was in the garden, that's where it happened. The words hit me like a physical blow. The garden, the very place where I unearthed the tin box. What does she want me to do? I asked, feeling a mix of dread and determination. She wants you to confront the past, Claire replied, her voice steady. You must return to the garden and acknowledge what happened. There is a piece of the truth buried there, and she needs you to help her find it." The weight of her words settled over me. It wasn't just about discovering what happened to Emma. It was about bringing closure to her spirit. "I will do it," I promised, feeling a fierce resolve well up within me. "I won't let her down." Claire nodded, a faint smile crossing her lips. "Good, but be cautious. The presence of the man still lingers, and he may not want the truth to come to light." My heart sank at the thought of facing whatever darkness remained in that garden. I had to be strong, not just for myself, but for Emma. I felt her presence beside me, a flicker of warmth, urging me forward. As the session came to a close, Claire returned to herself, and I felt the connection fade. She opened her eyes, looking a bit weary yet peaceful. "You have a difficult journey ahead, but you are not alone. Emma is with you." I thanked Claire and left the office, my mind swirling with revelations. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows on the streets as I made my way back home. The fear I felt was palpable, but it was overshadowed by a sense of purpose. That evening, I prepared myself for the confrontation. I gathered my flashlight, the tin box, and the photograph of Emma, placing them all in a small backpack. I needed to return to the garden to unearth the truth hidden in the shadows. As night fell, I made my way back to the garden, the darkness wrapping around me like a shroud. My heart pounded in my chest, but I pressed on, driven by the desire to free Emma's spirit and find closure for both of us. The garden was eerily quiet, the only sound the rustle of leaves in the wind. I felt a presence, a weight in the air, as I stepped through the rusty gate. The oak tree loomed ahead, its branches twisting against the moonlit sky. Kneeling once more at the base of the tree, I took a deep breath. "Emma," I whispered, feeling her spirit surrounding me. "I'm here. Let's uncover the truth together." With the flashlight illuminating the ground, I began to dig once more, focusing on the spot where I had found the tin box. As the earth gave way beneath my hands, I felt a surge of energy, a connection to the past. I knew something important lay buried here, something that would help Emma find peace. Suddenly, the ground shifted beneath me, revealing a small wooden panel partially hidden among the roots. My heart raced as I brushed away the dirt, uncovering a hidden compartment. With a firm grip, I pried it open, revealing a small, decaying journal. The moment I opened the journal, a wave of emotions washed over me. It was Emma's writing, her childish scrawl filling the pages with drawings and notes. My heart ached as I read her words, capturing her innocence and fears. She described her encounters with the dark figure, how she felt watched, how it filled her with dread. And then, I found a chilling entry. "I saw him today. He's always there, hiding behind the tree. I'm scared. I wish I could tell someone." Tears filled my eyes as I understood the depth of her fear. She had felt trapped, unseen, and unheard. The final entry sent shivers down my spine. "I'm going to play in the garden tomorrow. I hope he doesn't come. I just want to be happy again." I closed the journal, my heart heavy with sorrow for the girl who had just wanted to play. I realized then that the darkness had not just stolen her life, but had stolen her happiness, her innocence. As I stood up, I felt a presence behind me. The air shifted, and I turned, the flashlight beam revealing a figure standing at the edge of the garden. My breath caught in my throat. It was a man, tall, wearing a dark coat, his face partially obscured by shadows. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice trembling. He stepped forward, and I felt a cold chill wrap around me. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice low and threatening. "This place holds secrets that should remain buried." But Emma's voice filled my mind, urging me to stand my ground. "I won't let you keep her from peace," I declared, raising the flashlight defiantly. In that moment, I understood the true nature of my mission. It wasn't just about uncovering the past. It was about confronting the darkness that had claimed Emma. I had to face the fear, not just for myself, but for her spirit. As the man moved closer, I took a deep breath, channeling Emma's strength. "You can't scare me anymore. I know what you did." The figure froze, surprise flickering across his face. I could feel the energy in the air shift. Emma's presence surged within me, empowering my resolve. I knew this was my moment to break the cycle of fear that had held her captive for so long. With a final surge of determination, I took a step forward, the flashlight beam illuminating the man's face. And as the light hit him, his features twisted into a grimace, his shadow flickering like a candle in the wind. "Leave this place," he hissed, but my resolve only strengthened. "No," I said firmly. "You're the one who must leave. You can't haunt her anymore." The air crackled with tension as I stood my ground. The man's form began to waver, the darkness around him flickering like a dying flame. I could feel Emma's spirit behind me, a warmth enveloping me, guiding me. With one final surge of energy, I shouted, "Emma deserves peace. You will not take her happiness anymore." In that moment, the darkness shattered like glass. The man's figure dissipated, and I felt an overwhelming sense of light fill the garden, banishing the shadows that had lingered for far too long. As the last remnants of the darkness faded away, I felt a gentle breeze wash over me, carrying whispers of gratitude. Emma's spirit was free. I stood there, breathless, the weight of the world lifting from my shoulders. The garden, once filled with shadows and fear, now felt alive with warmth and light. I knew I had done what I set out to accomplish. I had freed Emma. Returning home, I cradled the journal close to my heart. Emma's story would not be forgotten. I would share her tale, ensuring that her memory lived on, that her laughter echoed in the hearts of those who remembered. And as I settled into bed that night, the photograph of Emma beside me, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The darkness had been confronted, the truth revealed. Emma's spirit was free, and so was I. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents. It was one of those mundane Tuesday afternoons when everything seemed to blend into a monotonous haze. I had been trying to reach customer service for what felt like an eternity. My phone pressed against my ear. I listened to the elevator music, a soft, annoying tune that repeated every few minutes. I glanced at the clock, wondering how long it would take to speak to an actual person. Finally, the soft chime of the automated voice interrupted my thoughts. "Your call is important to us. Please hold for the next available representative." I sighed, shifting in my seat. Just as I settled back, the music faded into silence, and a chilling voice broke through the static. "Help me." I froze, the voice echoing eerily in the quiet of my living room. It was faint, almost drowned out by the background noise of the call. Had I imagined it? My heart raced, and I replayed the words in my mind. "Help me. Hello." I instinctively replied, unsure if I was speaking to the representative or if my mind was playing tricks on me. There was a pause, a hesitation that felt unnervingly long. Then the voice returned, clearer this time, almost desperate. "Please, you have to listen to me." A chill ran down my spine. I glanced at the phone screen, checking for signs of a prank or some bizarre feature I hadn't noticed. But the call continued, the automated hold message oblivious to the presence of this strange voice. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I'm trapped," the voice whispered, filled with anguish. "I need your help. You have to get me out." "Where are you?" I stammered, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. The voice hesitated, and for a moment I thought it might have vanished. But then it came again, a haunting urgency filling the air. "In the dark. The basement. I can't escape." My pulse quickened. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Was this some sort of prank? Or was it something more sinister? I wanted to hang up, but something held me there, a desperate urge to understand. "Who are you?" I repeated, more firmly this time. "Someone who needs you," the voice replied, a hint of sorrow weaving through the words. "I'm not safe. Please, you have to help me." Just then, the music resumed, cutting through the conversation like a knife. "Your call is important to us. Please hold for the next available representative." The voice faded, replaced by the mechanical tone of the hold message. My heart raced, confusion swirling in my mind. Had I really just heard that? I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the unnerving experience. Moments later, the line clicked, and a representative's voice broke through the hold music. "Thank you for your patience. How can I assist you today?" I opened my mouth to respond, but my mind was still fixated on the haunting words I had just heard. I think I need to. Suddenly, a jolt of electricity coursed through me. The voice, so desperate and real, echoed in my mind. I needed to find out what was happening. Sorry, can you hold on for a second? I interrupted, cutting off the representative. I ended the call, my heart still racing, my mind a whirlpool of thoughts. What had I just experienced? It couldn't have been real. I grabbed my laptop and began typing, frantically searching for any reports of missing persons or stories about voices on hold. Anything that could lead me to understand what had just happened. The more I delved into my research, the more disturbed I became. There were tales of strange occurrences tied to old phone lines, stories of people hearing voices during calls that didn't belong to anyone on the other end. Some were benign, but others told of tragic fates, echoes of those who had suffered. As I scrolled through the pages, one story caught my attention. A local news report from a few years ago detailed the disappearance of a woman named Sarah, who had vanished without a trace. Her last known whereabouts were linked to a basement in an old house on the outskirts of town. The chilling details were enough to make my stomach turn. She had been declared missing for months, and despite numerous searches, there were no leads. A sense of dread filled me. What if the voice I heard was hers? I felt a pull deep within me, a sense of urgency urging me to act. I had to investigate further. Maybe, just maybe, the voice I heard on the phone was a plea for help, a call from beyond. I had to uncover the truth. But as I gathered my things and prepared to leave, a nagging doubt crept into my mind. What if I was wrong? What if I was just chasing shadows, fueled by fear and curiosity? I shook my head, forcing myself to focus. I couldn't turn back now. If there was even a slight chance that I could help, I had to try. With determination, I set out into the night, the memory of that voice echoing in my mind. Help me. I need your help. The night air was thick with anticipation as I drove toward the address I'd found in the article. The town had an eerie calm, the streetlights flickering like reluctant guardians of the night. I clutched the steering wheel tightly, my heart pounding with every mile I covered. The old house loomed ahead, shrouded in shadows and overgrown weeds. It had been abandoned for years, a relic of the past that seemed to whisper secrets to anyone brave enough to approach. I parked my car a safe distance away, my breath hitching in my throat as I stepped outside. The cold breeze brushed against my skin, a chilling reminder of the mystery that lay ahead. As I approached the front door, I felt a wave of unease wash over me. The house was silent, too silent, as if it were holding its breath. I hesitated for a moment, remembering the voice that had called for help. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open, the creak echoing like a mournful wail through the darkened halls. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with dust and the scent of decay. Moonlight filtered through the broken windows, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. I took cautious steps forward, my senses heightened, every creak of the floorboards amplifying my anxiety. Sarah, I whispered, the name slipping from my lips. It felt silly to call out into the darkness, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I moved through the rooms, my flashlight beam dancing across the remnants of a life long forgotten. Old furniture lay covered in dust, and the walls bore the marks of time, peeling wallpaper and faded photographs that stared back at me with hollow eyes. Each room told a story, and I felt as if I were trespassing on a tragedy. Then I spotted the basement door, slightly ajar. My heart raced as I approached, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. The voice had mentioned a basement, and the thought sent a shiver down my spine. I could feel the pull of something sinister, a deep-rooted fear mingling with an inexplicable need to know. With a trembling hand, I pushed the door open wider and peered into the darkness below. The stairs were steep and narrow, leading down into a black abyss. I hesitated again, but the voice echoed in my mind, urging me forward. I switched on my flashlight and took the first step, then another. Each creak of the stairs seemed to reverberate through the silence, and I was struck by the feeling that I was not alone. As I reached the bottom, I found myself in a cramped, dimly lit room filled with shadows. Boxes and old furniture were strewn about, and in the corner, I spotted a shape that made my stomach churn. It was a large, dusty trunk, its leather cracked and worn. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I couldn't ignore the sense of urgency, the need to uncover the truth. I approached the trunk, my hands trembling as I reached for the latch. The moment I lifted it, a rush of stale air escaped, carrying with it the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic. Inside, I found a collection of items: old clothes, a few personal belongings, and a small, tattered diary. My fingers brushed over the pages, and I carefully opened it, scanning the faded handwriting. The entries were fragmented, detailing moments of despair and fear. It was clear that Sarah had been trapped in a cycle of dread, hinting at someone or something that haunted her. One entry caught my eye. "I hear whispers at night. They come from the walls. I don't know how much longer I can stay here." A chill ran down my spine. The voice I had heard, it was possible that it was hers, an echo of her suffering. I turned to the next page, and my breath hitched. There, scrawled in frantic handwriting, was a single phrase repeated over and over. "Help me. I can't escape." I felt a surge of determination. I had to find out what had happened to her. Just as I closed the diary, a sound broke the silence, a faint rustling, like footsteps behind me. I spun around, flashlight beam slicing through the dark. "Who's there?" I called out, my heart pounding in my chest. The room fell silent, but the feeling of being watched intensified. I took a step back, preparing to leave, when suddenly, a figure appeared at the edge of my light. A man stood there, his face obscured by shadow. My breath caught in my throat as I squinted to see him more clearly. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the fear that coursed through me. "I could ask you the same thing," he replied, his tone calm but laced with something darker. "This is not a place for the curious." "Are you connected to Sarah?" I asked, desperate for answers. He chuckled softly, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You shouldn't be here." She was warned. Warned about what? I pressed, stepping closer despite the warning bells ringing in my head. He took a step forward, revealing a face that was both familiar and unsettling. It was as if I had seen him in a dream, his features hauntingly close but somehow distorted. "There are things in this house that shouldn't be disturbed. You're meddling in matters beyond your understanding." I hesitated, the weight of his words sinking in. I heard her voice. "She needs help." His expression shifted, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of concern. "You cannot help her. She is lost. The darkness has claimed her." "No," I insisted, my resolve strengthening. "I refuse to believe that. I have to try." With that, the man's demeanor changed, a flash of anger crossing his face. "You don't know what you're asking for. Leave now, while you still can." Before I could respond, he turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving me alone in the oppressive silence of the basement. My heart raced as I grappled with what had just happened. Had he been a guardian of some sort, warning me away? Or was he part of the very darkness I sought to confront? Either way, I felt a newfound urgency to uncover the truth about Sarah, to piece together the fragments of her story before it was too late. I took a deep breath and returned to the trunk, determined to find out more about the woman whose voice had beckoned me into this web of mystery. As I rifled through the contents, I felt the shadows closing in around me, and I knew that whatever secrets lay buried in this house, I was prepared to face them. As I sifted through the trunk's contents, I could feel a cold sweat forming on my brow. The diary had ignited a sense of urgency within me, but the man's warning lingered like a dark cloud overhead. I needed to find out who Sarah was and why her pleas for help had echoed through my mind. The trunk was filled with items that hinted at a life once vibrant, now reduced to mere remnants. Old photographs caught my eye. In one, Sarah was smiling, a bright-eyed girl holding a colorful kite on a sunny day. In another, she stood next to an older man, her father perhaps, his stern face a stark contrast to her youthful joy. As I examined each photo, I could feel a story unfolding, but the details remained just out of reach. I turned back to the diary, flipping through its pages until I found an entry that sent a shiver down my spine. "They watch me from the shadows. I hear them whispering at night, secrets too dreadful to bear. I found things in the walls, Hidden spaces that should never have been opened. My heart raced. Hidden spaces? What did she mean? I scanned the room, the old wooden walls seeming to loom closer. The man's warning echoed in my ears. You're meddling in matters beyond your understanding. I shook off the unease and focused on the task at hand. I carefully examined the walls, running my fingers over the peeling paint and cracks, searching for any sign of hidden compartments. My fingers brushed against something cool and metallic. I pressed against the wood, and a panel shifted slightly under my touch. With a quick pull, I opened it, revealing a narrow space behind the wall. Inside, the darkness swallowed my flashlight beam. I reached in, feeling around, and my hand brushed against something solid, a small, ornate box. I pulled it out and set it on the ground, my heart racing with anticipation. The box was old, decorated with intricate carvings that seemed to dance in the light. I carefully opened it, revealing a collection of letters tied with a faded ribbon. The first letter was addressed to Sarah, written in a shaky hand. My dear Sarah, if you are reading this, it means I could not protect you. There are forces in this house that seek to harm you. You must be careful. Do not trust anyone, not even me. The chilling words sent a wave of dread through me. Who had written this letter? I felt a pit form in my stomach, a mixture of fear and intrigue. I continued to read through the letters, each one revealing a deeper layer of Sarah's turmoil. In another letter, she wrote about strange occurrences in the house, shadows moving on their own, the feeling of being watched, and voices whispering her name in the dead of night. The last letter was the most haunting. I am terrified. I can feel them closing in. There are secrets in the basement that should never be uncovered. I fear I am losing my mind. If you find this, please remember me. A chill crept down my spine. This was no ordinary house. It was a nexus of fear and despair. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was drawing closer to something significant, something dark and dangerous. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the stairs above, breaking my concentration. My heart raced as I realized I wasn't alone in the house anymore. The sense of dread deepened as I grabbed the flashlight, illuminating the basement's corners. But I couldn't see anything. Is someone there? I called out, my voice steady despite the fear creeping in. Silence answered me, thick and suffocating. I knew I had to act quickly. The letters held the key to understanding Sarah's plight, but time was running out. I tucked the box and letters under my arm and made my way toward the staircase, determination fueling my steps. As I reached the top, I paused to listen. The house creaked and groaned, a symphony of age and neglect. The air felt charged, as if it were anticipating something. I could hear faint whispers now, like echoes of a conversation just out of reach. I strained to listen, feeling the urgency clawing at me. Help! Help! The voice was unmistakable, Sarah's voice, thin and desperate. It reverberated through the walls, urging me to move. Without hesitation, I stepped into the hallway and followed the sound. It grew louder as I navigated through the dark rooms, each door I passed feeling heavier than the last. The whispers intensified, guiding me toward the back of the house, where I found another door, this one covered in strange markings. The door looked ancient, its wood warped and splintered. My pulse quickened as I placed my hand on the handle. I could feel a warm energy radiating from it, as if something was beckoning me to enter. With a deep breath, I turned the handle and pushed the door open. Inside was a small room, the air thick with dust and an oppressive stillness. In the center stood an old mirror, its surface cracked and tarnished. The whispers became frantic, echoing around me. I stepped closer, compelled by an unseen force. As I gazed into the mirror, I saw not just my reflection, but flickers of movement behind me. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and I felt a rush of air as a shadowy figure appeared beside me. Panic surged through me as I turned to face it, the weight of fear anchoring me to the spot. "Help me," the figure cried, and in that moment, I recognized the pleading eyes of Sarah, trapped within the mirror's depths. Her face twisted in anguish, desperate to reach out, yet bound by something I couldn't comprehend. I reached out to touch the glass, the surface cool against my fingertips. "Sarah, I'm here to help you." "You shouldn't have come here," she screamed, her voice a haunting echo. "They will take you too." The realization hit me like a thunderclap. The darkness that had claimed her was now reaching for me. I stumbled back, the mirror reflecting not just my fear but the reality of my situation, a choice between fleeing and standing my ground. "You have to leave." Sarah's voice broke through the haze. "Before it's too late." The urgency in her words snapped me back to reality. I had to find a way to break the hold this house had over her. Desperation filled my heart, and I made a decision. "I won't leave you," I shouted, my voice steady against the encroaching dread. Suddenly, the whispers intensified, a cacophony of voices swirling around me. I could feel the pressure building, the shadows around me growing darker. I had to confront the darkness, to challenge whatever malevolent force was at play. "I will set you free," I declared, my voice unwavering. The shadows flickered, and for a moment, Sarah's expression softened. "You must find the source," she urged. "The basement. There's something there. You must destroy it." With that, the shadows surged, pulling at my very being. I felt the room spinning as the whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. I stumbled backward, my resolve wavering, but Sarah's eyes remained locked onto mine. "Fight it," she cried, her voice cutting through the chaos. With renewed determination, I turned and sprinted toward the basement door, my heart pounding as I raced against the encroaching darkness. I would uncover the source of Sarah's torment, and I would do everything in my power to bring her back to the light. As I burst through the basement door, a wave of cold air enveloped me, chilling me to the bone. The shadows clung to the corners, twisting and swirling like living entities, eager to ensnare me in their grasp. The whispers followed me, a chorus of despair urging me to turn back, but I pressed on. The echoes of Sarah's voice reverberated in my mind, guiding me deeper into the darkness. I switched on my flashlight, the beam cutting through the oppressive gloom. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of the house's history pressing down on me. My heart raced as I descended the narrow staircase, the wooden steps creaking ominously underfoot. At the bottom, the basement opened into a cavernous space, filled with old furniture covered in dusty sheets. Shadows danced around the room, as if watching my every move. I took a moment to gather myself, scanning the area for any sign of the source of Sarah's torment. The walls were lined with shelves stacked with forgotten relics, but one corner caught my attention. There, partially hidden behind a stack of old crates, was an ancient-looking door, its surface marred with strange symbols that seemed to writhe in the dim light. The air around it felt charged, pulsating with an energy that made my skin crawl. I felt an inexplicable pull toward it, as if it were calling to me. With a deep breath, I approached the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. The moment I touched it, a jolt of energy surged through me, and the whispers intensified, rising to a fever pitch. I could hear Sarah's voice among the cacophony, urging me to be careful. "Do not open it," she screamed, her voice filled with a mix of fear and desperation. But I had come too far to turn back. I needed to understand what lay behind this door. Ignoring the rising tide of panic, I twisted the handle and pushed the door open. The hinges groaned in protest as the door swung wide, revealing a small, dimly lit chamber. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. In the center of the room stood an altar, covered in a dark, crusted substance that looked disturbingly like blood. Around the altar were remnants of old rituals, candles melted into grotesque shapes, and odd artifacts that seemed to hum with a sinister energy. I stepped inside, my flashlight illuminating the scene. As I moved closer to the altar, I felt a presence behind me, heavy and oppressive. I turned quickly, my heart racing, but the room was empty. "You shouldn't have come here," a voice growled from the shadows, sending chills racing down my spine. It was deep and guttural, resonating through the air like thunder. I spun back toward the altar, fear flooding my senses. "Who are you?" I demanded, though my voice trembled. "I am the keeper of this place," the voice replied, echoing in the stillness. "You've disturbed something that should have remained buried." I could feel the darkness closing in around me, thick and suffocating. "I'm here for Sarah," I shouted, desperation fueling my courage. She needs my help. She is mine, the voice hissed. Her spirit is bound to this house, and you cannot save her. I won't give up on her, I declared, stepping closer to the altar. What do I need to do? The shadowy figure materialized before me, a swirling mass of darkness with glowing eyes that pierced through the gloom. You must make a choice. Sacrifice your own essence, or let her remain in eternal torment. Panic surged through me as I weighed my options. Could I truly sacrifice myself for Sarah? The thought of her trapped in this hellish existence spurred me into action. I'll do it, I shouted, resolve solidifying in my heart. I'll save her. Foolish child, the voice boomed, and the room shook. You cannot comprehend the consequences of your choice. But I was already moving forward, determined to break the hold this entity had over Sarah. I reached out toward the altar, feeling the energy pulse through my fingertips. The air crackled as I called upon everything I had, my will, my strength, my very essence. I command you to release her, I cried, channeling my energy into the altar. The dark substance began to shift, quivering as if responding to my command. The shadows swirled violently, the temperature in the room plummeting. I could hear Sarah's voice again, clear and desperate. Fight it. I won't let you take her. I roared, feeling the power surge within me. The entity screamed in rage, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. With one final push, I poured everything I had into the altar. The darkness writhed and twisted, battling against my resolve, but I held firm. I could feel Sarah's spirit within the depths of the shadows, fighting to break free. Release her, I shouted once more, my voice echoing through the chamber. In that moment, the shadows exploded outward, enveloping me in a whirlwind of chaos. I felt myself being pulled in every direction, but I focused on Sarah, envisioning her free from this torment. As the darkness reached its peak, a blinding light burst forth from the altar, engulfing the room. I shielded my eyes, feeling the energy wash over me like a tidal wave. The whispers faded into silence, replaced by a serene stillness. When the light dimmed, I found myself standing alone in the chamber, the altar now empty, the symbols on the walls faded into dust. The air felt lighter, the oppressive weight lifted. I turned slowly, heart racing, hoping against hope that I had succeeded. And then I heard it, the soft sound of footsteps approaching from behind. I spun around, and there she was, Sarah, standing before me, her eyes clear and filled with gratitude. You did it, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. You freed me. Relief washed over me as I stepped forward, embracing her. I thought I lost you, I murmured, holding her tightly. You saved me, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. But we must go. This place, it still holds darkness. Together, we turned toward the exit, leaving the remnants of the chamber behind. The house may have tried to claim us, but we had triumphed against its sinister grip. I knew our journey wasn't over, but at that moment, we were free. As we ascended the stairs, I could feel a warmth radiating from Sarah, a sign that the darkness was finally lifting. We stepped out of the basement, the whispers fading into silence, and the light of day spilling through the windows, casting away the shadows of the past. But deep down, I knew that the battle against the darkness was far from over. We had faced one evil together, but there were more secrets waiting to be uncovered, more shadows lurking just beyond the light. And as we stepped into the new dawn, I realized our journey was just beginning. The sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the living room with a warmth I hadn't felt in ages. As Sarah and I settled into the familiar surroundings, I couldn't shake the sense of unease that lingered. Yes, we had escaped the clutches of darkness, but I knew we had only scratched the surface of the mysteries that lay beneath the surface of our reality. What now? Sarah asked, her voice steady but tinged with fatigue. She glanced around, as if the house itself might reveal more secrets. We need to understand what we just went through, I replied, feeling a surge of determination. There's more to this place than we realized. I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. Her eyes widened, but she nodded, a flicker of the fierce spirit I admired shining through. I want to know what happened here too. Together, we began our exploration of the house. Armed with a flashlight and a notebook, we retraced our steps to the basement. The air was cooler here, and an eerie silence enveloped us as we stepped back into the room that had nearly consumed Sarah's soul. The altar remained untouched, its dark history lingering like a heavy fog. "Look at this," I said, pointing to the faded symbols on the walls. They seemed to shimmer slightly in the dim light. They're not just random markings. They might be part of some ritual or spell. Sarah knelt beside the altar, her fingers brushing over the remnants of what had once been a dark ceremony. "Maybe we can find out what they mean. There has to be a reason this place is haunted." The more we examined the room, the more I felt the pull of the unknown. Each object, each shadow seemed to whisper secrets, begging to be uncovered. I grabbed my phone and started researching the house's history online. I found articles about its previous owners, local legends about hauntings, and accounts of strange occurrences that had plagued the neighborhood for decades. "This isn't just a haunted house, it's a nexus of dark energy," I said, excitement building in my voice. "People have vanished nearby, and sightings of spirits are rampant. We have to dig deeper." "You think it's connected to the altar?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowing. "Absolutely. I think whatever happened here tied the spirits to this place. If we can learn about the rituals, we might be able to set them free, and maybe find out what happened to those who disappeared." For the next few days, we scoured libraries and scoured online databases, piecing together the history of the house and its dark past. Each story revealed a tapestry of sorrow and loss. Families torn apart, lives cut short, and a shadowy figure that seemed to loom over everything. One night, as we pored over an old journal I had discovered in the attic, I came across a passage that sent chills down my spine. "The keeper of the shadows demands a price. Those who enter seeking knowledge may not return. Their essences become part of the dark energy, bound to the house for eternity." "We need to be careful," Sarah warned, her voice low. "We don't know what we're dealing with." "I know, but if we can find a way to break the cycle, we might save others from what we went through," I replied, resolve strengthening my voice. As we continued our investigation, we unearthed more chilling stories, but one in particular caught my attention. It was a local legend about a group of teenagers who had ventured into the basement decades ago. They had never returned. "Their families are still looking for answers," I said, my heart racing. "What if we could find out what happened to them? Maybe we can finally give them closure." Sarah nodded, her expression fierce. "Then we need to return to that altar and confront whatever darkness still lingers there. We owe it to them, and to ourselves." With our plan in place, we prepared for another descent into the basement. This time, however, we were armed not just with knowledge but with purpose. We weren't just seeking to understand the past. We were on a mission to confront it head-on. As we made our way down the staircase once more, a sense of foreboding enveloped us. The air was thick with tension, and the darkness seemed to pulse in anticipation. We reached the altar, and the shadows coiled around us, whispering secrets just beyond our grasp. "Are you ready?" I asked Sarah, my heart pounding. "Ready as I'll ever be," she replied, determination etched on her face. Together, we placed our hands on the altar, feeling its energy thrumming beneath our fingertips. I closed my eyes, envisioning the spirits trapped within these walls, yearning for release. "We seek knowledge, and we offer our strength," I declared. "We want to free the lost souls and put an end to this darkness." The shadows swirled violently, the air crackling with energy. I could feel the presence of the keeper pushing back, resisting our intentions. "You cannot control what you do not understand," it bellowed. "We'll find a way," Sarah shouted, her voice strong. We refused to be afraid. In that moment, I felt a shift. The shadows wavered, as if reconsidering our resolve. We focused our energy, channeling it into a radiant light that pushed back against the darkness. The room shook violently, and I could hear the echoes of the lost souls, whispers of fear, regret, and longing. "Let them go," I cried, summoning every ounce of courage within me. They deserve peace. Suddenly, the darkness erupted, swirling around us in a tempest of chaos. But we stood our ground, refusing to yield. The altar blazed with light, illuminating the room as the shadows writhed in pain. "No!" the keeper roared, its voice a cacophony of rage and despair. With one final surge, we unleashed our energy, a blinding flash erupting from the altar. The shadows screamed, and for a brief moment, I felt the presence of the lost souls surrounding us, their gratitude palpable. As the light enveloped us, everything fell silent. The shadows dissipated, and I found myself standing in a serene room, devoid of darkness. The altar was gone, replaced by a warm glow that filled the space. "Did we do it?" Sarah breathed, her eyes wide with disbelief. "I think we did," I replied, my heart swelling with hope. In that moment, we understood that the battle was won, but the journey was far from over. Together, we had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but we would meet them side by side. As we ascended the stairs into the light of day, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The house, once a prison of shadows, now held the promise of new beginnings. And as we stepped outside, I couldn't help but feel that our story was just beginning. "Let's tell the world what we've uncovered," I said, determination burning in my chest. "We need to warn others and help those who might be trapped like we were." Sarah nodded, a fierce light in her eyes. "Together, we'll make sure no one else has to face this alone." With that, we walked into the dawn, ready to embrace whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that we were not just survivors, but warriors against the darkness. Our voices would echo through the community, a call to action for those who dare to face their fears and uncover the truths that lay hidden beneath the surface. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents. In the quaint town of Willow Creek, where time seemed to stand still, I found myself drawn to the charm of an old Victorian house that had recently been put on the market. The exterior was adorned with intricate woodwork and surrounded by sprawling gardens. But it was the mysterious aura that surrounded the house that piqued my curiosity. Having always been fascinated by the stories of the past, I felt a magnetic pull toward this relic of history. As I stepped inside for the first time, the scent of aged wood and dust enveloped me like a comforting embrace. The air was thick with secrets, and every creak of the floorboard seemed to whisper tales of the lives that had unfolded within these walls. My heart raced as I moved from room to room, exploring the faded wallpaper and the remnants of forgotten furniture. It was in the study that I stumbled upon the first clue, an ornate bookcase that stretched from floor to ceiling, its shelves lined with leather-bound volumes. I couldn't resist running my fingers over the spines, each one promising knowledge and adventure. But as I examined the bookcase more closely, I noticed something peculiar. The dust on the floor revealed a slight indentation on the carpet, as if the bookcase had been pushed aside recently. Intrigued, I took a step back and analyzed the shelf. One book in particular, a weathered tome with no title, seemed to call to me. Without thinking, I reached for it, and as I pulled it from the shelf, the bookcase groaned softly. To my astonishment, it began to shift, revealing a narrow passageway that had been concealed behind it. "What the?" I whispered, my heart pounding with excitement and trepidation. With cautious curiosity, I stepped into the hidden room, my pulse quickening as I left the familiar behind. The space was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from a single flickering bulb overhead. Dust motes danced in the air, and the scent of mustiness filled my lungs. It felt like stepping into another world, a world forgotten by time. The walls were lined with shelves, but instead of books, they were filled with peculiar artifacts, old photographs, ornate trinkets, and oddities that hinted at a life once lived. A cracked mirror leaned against one wall, its surface marred by age, reflecting the shadows that seemed to whisper secrets. In the center of the room stood an antique writing desk, its surface cluttered with papers, ink pots, and quills. I approached it, feeling a sense of reverence. The papers were yellowed and fragile, each one filled with elegant script that told stories of love, loss, and mystery. As I sifted through the documents, one letter caught my eye, a faded correspondence dated back over a century. It spoke of a hidden treasure, a legacy left behind by the original owner of the house. My breath hitched as I read the words. To whomever finds this, know that I have hidden something of great value within these walls. Seek the truth, and you shall be rewarded. But beware, dark forces may wish to keep it buried. The thrill of discovery surged through me, igniting my imagination. What could this treasure be, and why had it been hidden away? But as excitement coursed through my veins, a sense of unease settled in the pit of my stomach. Suddenly, a noise echoed from the hallway, a low creak followed by the sound of footsteps. I froze, heart racing. Had someone else discovered my secret? I pressed myself against the wall, my breath caught in my throat as I strained to listen. The footsteps grew louder, and the door to the study creaked open. A figure appeared in the doorway, a tall man with a long coat and a hat that obscured his face. He scanned the room, and I could see a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low and commanding. I stepped out from the shadows, my heart pounding. I found this hidden room. I'm just exploring." His expression hardened, and he took a step closer, blocking my path. "You shouldn't be here. Some secrets are best left undisturbed." A chill ran down my spine, and I instinctively took a step back. "What do you mean? Is there something you're not telling me?" He hesitated, and for a moment, I thought he might relent, but then his gaze hardened again. "This house has a history you don't understand. Leave now, and forget what you've seen." Before I could respond, he turned on his heel and left the room, the door swinging shut behind him. I was left in the dim light, my mind racing with questions. Who was he? What did he know about the house? And what secrets lay hidden behind those walls? Determined to uncover the truth, I knew I had to delve deeper into the mysteries of the house. The hidden room beckoned me, filled with the promise of adventure and danger. But as I returned to the desk, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone in this pursuit. Something darker lingered in the shadows, watching and waiting. With newfound resolve, I began to sift through the artifacts, hoping to uncover more clues about the treasure and the secrets of the house. The thrill of the unknown thrummed in my veins, and I was ready to uncover the hidden truth, no matter the cost. The air in the hidden room felt thick with anticipation as I began to explore the cluttered surfaces of the desk. My fingers brushed over the delicate artifacts, each piece telling a story, whispering fragments of a life once lived. As I examined the scattered papers, a sense of urgency began to build within me. I needed to understand the gravity of what I had discovered. I picked up the letter once more, its yellowed edges crinkling under my touch. The message had hinted at a treasure, but it was laced with warnings, dark forces wishing to keep it buried. My mind raced as I contemplated the implications. Who had written this letter? And why had they felt the need to conceal such important information? Pushing aside my trepidation, I began to examine the other items in the room. An intricately carved wooden box caught my eye, tucked away in a corner. I reached for it, feeling its cool surface against my skin. The box was locked, but the craftsmanship was exquisite, adorned with swirling patterns that seemed to pulse with energy. My heart raced at the thought of what secrets it might hold. Just then, I noticed an ornate key hanging from a nail on the wall, its design matching the box. I approached it with cautious excitement, retrieving the key and feeling its weight in my palm. It felt like destiny, as if it had been waiting for me all along. I carefully inserted the key into the lock and turned it with a soft click. The lid creaked open to reveal a collection of old photographs, each one depicting the same woman, a striking figure with dark hair and piercing eyes. As I flipped through the images, a chill crept down my spine. The woman seemed familiar, her expression both haunting and mesmerizing. Among the photographs was a faded portrait of her standing in front of the very house I now inhabited. Beneath it, in a delicate script, was a date, July 14th, 1923. I felt a shiver of recognition. This was the same date that appeared in the original letter, but what significance did it hold? Flipping through the rest of the photographs, I uncovered more images of gatherings, celebrations, and solemn events. It seemed this woman had been at the center of it all. Yet, there was one photo that stood out, a darkened image of the house, with a shadowy figure lurking in the background. My heart raced as I examined it closely, the figure's presence almost palpable, as if it were watching me through time. Suddenly, I was jolted from my thoughts by a sound echoing from the hallway, a low, distant thud that reverberated through the walls. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but the curiosity that had drawn me in was stronger than my fear. I needed to know more about the woman in the photographs and the connection to the mysterious man I had encountered. With my pulse quickening, I returned to the desk, searching for any additional clues. Scattered among the papers, I discovered a diary, its cover worn and the pages yellowed. As I opened it, the scent of aging paper filled the air. The writing was elegant yet frantic, filled with thoughts and confessions that transported me back in time. The entries spoke of a life filled with joy and despair. The woman, whose name was revealed to be Eleanor, described her love for the house and the community that surrounded it. But as the entries progressed, the tone shifted. She wrote about strange occurrences, whispers in the night, objects moving on their own, and an overwhelming sense of dread that seemed to seep through the walls. I fear something dark lurks within these walls, watching me, waiting for the moment to strike. The chilling words sent a wave of unease through me. As I continued to read, I found an entry that made my heart race. I've hidden something within the house, a truth that must never be uncovered. I pray it remains hidden, for the danger is too great. The implications of her words settled over me like a shroud. What truth had she hidden, and why did it pose such a threat? My mind raced with questions, each one more pressing than the last. Suddenly, the memory of the man in the long coat returned to me. What if he was connected to the dark forces Eleanor had spoken of? Was he searching for the same truth, intent on uncovering whatever she had hidden? My thoughts spiraled as I realized the urgency of my situation. If I was to uncover the mystery, I needed to act quickly. I gathered the photographs and the diary, placing them carefully in my bag. I had to return to the main part of the house and continue my investigation. As I moved to exit the hidden room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The air grew heavier, and the flickering bulb above seemed to dim, casting eerie shadows against the walls. As I stepped back into the study, I paused, scanning the room for any signs of the man. My heart raced as I opened the door, the creaking sound echoing through the silence. I stepped into the hallway, the atmosphere thick with tension. I crept toward the staircase, the wood groaning beneath my feet. Just as I reached the landing, a chilling voice echoed from behind me. "What have you found?" I turned slowly, my heart pounding as I came face to face with the man from before. His presence loomed like a shadow, his eyes piercing through the dim light. "You shouldn't have opened that room. It's not meant for you." The weight of his words hung in the air, and I felt a surge of defiance. "I need to know the truth. What are you hiding?" He stepped closer, his expression darkening. "Some truths are better left buried. You have no idea what you're dealing with." The room felt constricting, the walls closing in around us. I could sense the danger in his voice, but the lure of the mystery was too strong. I had to uncover Eleanor's truth, no matter the cost. As the man's gaze bore into mine, I felt a flicker of resolve. "I'm not afraid of you," I declared, though my heart raced with fear. With that, I turned away, determined to delve deeper into the mysteries that surrounded me, unaware of the dark forces that were now tracking my every move. The quest for the truth was only just beginning, and I would uncover whatever secrets lay hidden in the shadows of the house, no matter the danger that awaited me. With my heart pounding in my chest, I bolted down the hallway, my mind racing. The man's warning echoed in my ears, but my resolve was stronger than the fear clawing at my insides. I needed to uncover the truth about Eleanor and whatever dark forces were intertwined with her story. I made my way back to the living room, the faint afternoon light spilling through the windows. The house felt different now, as if it was holding its breath, waiting for my next move. I sank into the worn armchair, clutching the diary and photographs, my fingers trembling slightly. The weight of the discovery was heavy, but I could not turn back. As I skimmed through the diary once more, I focused on the details of Eleanor's experiences. Each entry was filled with a growing sense of dread, leading me to believe that she had indeed stumbled upon something sinister. The diary spoke of her encounters with a shadowy figure, someone who resembled the man I had just encountered. My mind raced with possibilities. Was he somehow connected to her fate? I must find out more, I whispered to myself. I had to learn what Eleanor had discovered that made her hide the truth so desperately. As dusk began to settle, the shadows in the room lengthened, the atmosphere becoming increasingly oppressive. I decided to search for any additional clues within the house, perhaps hidden letters or objects that could shed light on Eleanor's life. With renewed determination, I ventured into the dimly lit hallway, feeling the weight of the diary pressing against my side. I first approached the small study adjoining the living room. It was cluttered with dusty bookshelves, the musty smell of old paper filling the air. I scanned the shelves, hoping to find something of significance. As I pulled a few books down, a large tome fell to the floor with a thud, sending up a cloud of dust. I picked it up and examined the spine. It was a history of the town, chronicling events that had transpired over the decades. I flipped through the pages, absorbing the stories of past residents. Just as I was about to close the book, a loose page slipped out, fluttering to the ground. Curious, I picked it up. It was a newspaper clipping dated July 15th, 1923. My heart raced as I read the headline: "Mysterious Disappearance Shocks Local Community." The article detailed the strange vanishing of a woman matching Eleanor's description. The town had been gripped with fear, whispers of curses and dark spirits circulating among the residents. The last line sent a chill through me. The investigation continues, but the truth remains elusive, buried beneath layers of secrecy. This was it. This was the piece of evidence that tied Eleanor's fate to the haunting atmosphere of the house. I tucked the clippings safely into my pocket, a sense of urgency washing over me. I had to find out where Eleanor had gone, what had happened to her. I moved swiftly through the house, each creak of the floorboards amplifying the tension in the air. The light was fading, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. I decided to head to the basement. Perhaps it held more secrets. As I descended the creaking steps, a chill enveloped me. The basement was dimly lit, the weak bulb flickering as I scanned the area. Old furniture and boxes cluttered the space, remnants of a past life that had been left behind. My flashlight illuminated dusty corners, revealing forgotten treasures and remnants of Eleanor's existence. I began to sift through the boxes, my heart racing with every item I unearthed. Old clothes, photographs, and household items all whispered tales of a life once vibrant, now lost to time. In a corner, I stumbled upon a large trunk, its surface adorned with intricate carvings similar to those I had seen on the wooden box in the hidden room. My hands trembled as I unlatched it, the sound echoing through the stillness of the basement. Inside lay a collection of journals, each one meticulously labeled with dates. I could feel the weight of Eleanor's memories pressing down on me as I opened the first one. The entries chronicled her life in the house, her relationships, and the growing paranoia that enveloped her. There were mentions of strange occurrences, objects moving on their own, whispers in the night, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. But the entries grew darker, filled with references to a dark figure that seemed to haunt her every move. I can feel it lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. One entry read. It sent shivers down my spine. Eleanor had felt the same presence that had unnerved me since my arrival. As I continued to read, I found a shocking entry dated just days before her disappearance. I believe the truth lies hidden in the walls of this house. I must uncover it before it's too late. I felt a surge of determination. I needed to find whatever Eleanor had hidden, whatever secrets the house held. But just as I closed the journal, a sound echoed from above, a soft creak that sent my heart racing. Someone was in the house. I quickly tucked the journals back into the trunk, my mind racing as I listened intently. The footsteps were faint, but they were getting closer. My instincts kicked in, and I darted behind a stack of boxes, my breath shallow and quick. The door creaked open, and I peered through the gap to see a figure step into the basement. My heart dropped as I recognized the man, the one who had warned me earlier. His face was twisted with determination, and he scanned the room as if he were hunting for something specific. "I know you're down here," he called out, his voice low and menacing. "You shouldn't have meddled in things you don't understand." I held my breath, every muscle in my body tense. This was the moment I had feared, yet I had come too far to turn back. I needed to confront him, to understand why he was so intent on stopping me. I waited until he turned his back. Then I quietly crept toward the stairs, ready to confront him. But just as I reached the landing, a loud crash echoed from the far corner of the basement. The man whirled around, eyes wide with anger. "You think you can just walk away?" he shouted, his voice reverberating through the cold space. Panic surged through me as I rushed up the stairs, my heart racing. I needed to escape and find a way to protect myself. As I reached the top, I glanced back one last time, meeting his intense gaze. "You're making a mistake," he called, his tone both desperate and threatening. "You don't know what you're dealing with." With that, I dashed through the hallway, desperate to find safety and answers. The shadows of the house loomed larger than ever, and I could feel the weight of Eleanor's legacy pressing down on me. I had awakened something far more dangerous than I could have imagined, and the truth was still hidden in the darkness. I fled down the hallway, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I reached the front door. I hesitated for just a moment, glancing back at the shadows behind me. The man was still in the basement, but the sense of danger hung thick in the air. I flung open the door and stumbled outside, the cool night air hitting my face like a splash of cold water. The moon hung low, casting a silvery glow over the yard. I raced to my car, fumbling with my keys as I glanced back at the house. It loomed ominously, its windows like dark eyes watching my every move. I jumped inside and locked the doors, my heart still pounding. I needed to think, to gather my thoughts before making another move. As I sat in the car, the man's words replayed in my mind. "You don't know what you're dealing with." What did he mean? What secret lay buried in the house? And why was he so desperate to keep it hidden? I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. I needed to gather more information about Eleanor and the connection to the strange man. With renewed determination, I decided to go to the town library. It was late, but the flickering lights still promised answers hidden among the stacks. Driving through the quiet streets, I felt the weight of the night pressing down on me. The town felt different, almost suffocating, as if it too held its breath in anticipation of something dreadful. I parked in front of the library, its old facade illuminated under the streetlights, and hurried inside. The musty smell of old books greeted me, mixing with the cool air. I scanned the empty space, my footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. The librarian, a gray-haired woman with sharp eyes, looked up from her desk. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone a mixture of curiosity and caution. "I'm looking for information about a woman named Eleanor," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "She lived here many years ago." The librarian's expression shifted, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "Eleanor Hawthorne? There are some records in the local history section. Follow me. ***. She led me to a dimly lit corner of the library, filled with dusty shelves. I could feel the weight of history in the air, as if the walls themselves were holding secrets. She pulled out a box from the bottom shelf labeled Local Disappearances. "This should have what you need," she said, her tone now serious. I opened the box, sifting through old newspaper clippings, photographs, and handwritten notes. One article caught my attention immediately. "Eleanor Hawthorne, local girl goes missing." The article detailed her last known whereabouts, describing her as a vibrant young woman who suddenly vanished without a trace. As I read further, my heart sank. The article hinted at strange occurrences in her life leading up to her disappearance, including sightings of a shadowy figure and reports of haunting sounds coming from her home. The townspeople had whispered about curses, about a darkness that clung to the Hawthorne family. "You should be careful," the librarian said quietly, almost as if she were reading my thoughts. "Some stories are best left untold." Eleanor's disappearance was never solved, and many believe it was tied to something unnatural. I looked up, her words echoing in my mind. The connection between the house, the strange man, and Eleanor was becoming clearer, yet more disturbing. I had to delve deeper. Is there anything else? Any records or letters?" I asked, urgency creeping into my voice. "Let me check the archives," she replied, moving towards a locked cabinet. After a moment of searching, she returned with a small envelope. "This was found in the old Hawthorne house during renovations. It may be of interest to you." I took the envelope, my hands trembling with anticipation. Inside, I found a series of letters, each one filled with Eleanor's elegant handwriting. The first letter was addressed to her mother, filled with mundane details about her life. But as I read further, the tone shifted. "I've been hearing things, strange sounds in the night. I think someone is watching me. I don't feel safe in this house anymore." Each subsequent letter grew darker, revealing Eleanor's escalating fear. "I can't shake the feeling that something is in the walls, listening, waiting. I found things moved around in the night. I swear it's as if the house is alive." My heart raced as I read the final letter. "I'm planning to leave. I can't stay here. I need to find out the truth, even if it scares me. Please don't worry about me. I'll be okay." That was the last anyone had heard from her. I felt the weight of the truth pressing down on me. Eleanor had known something, had sensed the danger lurking in the shadows. And now, I was drawn into the same web of fear and uncertainty. "What will you do now?" the librarian asked, her voice breaking my reverie. "I need to go back," I said, resolve hardening in my chest. I have to find out what she discovered. As I left the library, clutching the letters tightly, I felt the cold grip of fear and determination intertwining within me. I was on the precipice of uncovering a dark secret, one that had been buried beneath the weight of time and fear. Driving back to the house, my mind raced with thoughts of Eleanor and the man who had warned me. I needed to confront whatever darkness lingered there, to uncover the truth that had haunted Eleanor and the entire town for decades. The house awaited, shrouded in shadows, but I was ready to face the secrets hidden within. With a deep breath, I parked in front of the house, the moonlight illuminating the path ahead. I was not just a visitor anymore. I was determined to unearth the truth, no matter the cost. As I stepped out of the car, the chill of the night air wrapped around me like a shroud. The house stood silently, its windows dark and uninviting. I could feel the weight of history pressing down, a palpable tension that thrummed in the air. This was where Eleanor had last been seen, where her fears had taken root, and I was determined to face whatever lay within its walls. I approached the front door, the old wood creaking under my touch. With a deep breath, I pushed it open and stepped inside. The familiar musty smell enveloped me, but tonight, it felt different, charged with an energy that sent shivers down my spine. I flicked on the light, and the bulb flickered reluctantly, casting shadows that danced across the walls. I moved through the house, every creak of the floorboards echoing in the stillness. The living room felt almost alive, filled with the ghosts of memories. I stopped by the fireplace, recalling the warmth of family gatherings long past. But there was a heaviness here, an unsettling sensation that something was not right. My thoughts drifted back to Eleanor's letters. I needed to start in her bedroom, the heart of her life here. I climbed the stairs, each step a reminder of the weight of the history I was walking on. The door to her room was slightly ajar, and as I pushed it open, the air seemed to grow colder. The room was preserved as if time had stopped. Her bed was unmade, clothes scattered on the floor, and a small desk sat against the wall, covered in notes and sketches. I felt a pang of sadness at the chaos, a reflection of the turmoil Eleanor must have experienced. As I rifled through the papers, I found drawings of strange symbols, sketches of the house, and notes filled with frantic handwriting. Something is wrong with the walls. They watch me at night. I need to break through. The intensity of her fear seeped into my bones. She had been desperate to uncover something hidden, something that might explain her nightmares and the dark figure she sensed. Suddenly, a noise broke the stillness. I froze, straining to listen. It was a soft whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. "Help me." My heart raced. Was it my imagination? Had I finally crossed into madness? Or was it Eleanor's voice reaching out from the depths of time? I took a cautious step toward the sound, feeling drawn to it like a moth to a flame. "Eleanor," I called out, my voice trembling. "Is that you?" The whisper faded, replaced by an eerie silence. I moved towards the wall, where the sound had seemed to originate. The wallpaper was peeling, and as I traced my fingers along the surface, I felt a strange vibration beneath my touch. It was as if the wall was alive, pulsating with a hidden energy. Driven by instinct, I began to push against the wall. At first, nothing happened, but as I pressed harder, I felt it give way slightly. My heart raced with anticipation. Was this what Eleanor had sensed? With a final shove, the wall creaked, revealing a small opening, a hidden passage. My breath caught in my throat as I peered inside, darkness swallowing whatever lay beyond. The passage was narrow, but I could see faint traces of light flickering at the end. "Eleanor," I called again, stepping into the opening. The air grew cooler as I made my way down the dim corridor. The walls were lined with more of the strange symbols I had seen in her sketches. They seemed to pulse with an energy of their own, drawing me deeper into the darkness. I emerged into a small room, and my breath hitched at the sight before me. The room was filled with old furniture, dust covering every surface, but in the center was a large, ornate mirror. Its surface shimmered, reflecting not just the room, but something beyond, shadows shifting, indistinct forms moving just out of reach. As I stepped closer, I felt a pull, an irresistible force drawing me to the mirror. The whisper returned, louder this time. "Help me, Eleanor," I shouted, my voice echoing in the small space. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the cool glass. Instantly, the room seemed to shift around me, shadows swirling violently as the mirror flickered. In that moment, I saw her, Eleanor, her eyes wide with fear and desperation, trapped within the glass. "You have to break it," she cried, her voice distorted but clear. "You have to free me." My heart raced as I took a step back, grappling with the reality of what I was witnessing. "What do you mean? How do I help you?" "The curse binds me here. It feeds on fear. Break the mirror and set us free." I glanced around, searching for something, anything to shatter the glass. My gaze fell on a heavy lamp in the corner. With determination coursing through my veins, I rushed over, yanking it free from the floor. With a scream that echoed through the darkness, I swung the lamp at the mirror. Glass shattered, shards flying in all directions. A piercing scream filled the air, reverberating as the mirror splintered. In an explosion of light, the shadows twisted and writhed, and I felt a rush of wind as if the house itself was exhaling. The darkness that had enveloped Eleanor began to dissolve, her figure breaking free from the confines of the glass. "Thank you," she cried, her voice now a soft echo as she disappeared into a brilliant light. As the last remnants of darkness dissipated, I fell to my knees, breathing heavily, the weight of the house lifting. I had faced the shadows and broken the curse that had bound Eleanor for so long. With tears streaming down my face, I whispered, "You're free now, Eleanor." The air felt lighter, the house no longer oppressive but filled with a sense of peace. I knew I had uncovered the truth hidden within the walls, and in doing so, I had liberated a soul trapped by fear. As I stood up and dusted myself off, I could hear the soft echo of gratitude in the silence. I had ventured into the darkness and emerged victorious, and the house, once a prison, now felt like a sanctuary. With a final glance back at the remnants of the mirror, I stepped out of the hidden room, knowing that I had not only saved Eleanor, but had also reclaimed my own sense of courage. The shadows that once haunted me were now merely a part of the past, and I could finally move forward, embracing the light that awaited me beyond the threshold. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents. In every neighborhood, there exists a house that stirs the imagination, its crumbling walls, overgrown garden, and peeling paint inviting whispers and speculation. In my small town, that house stood at the end of Maple Street, a place long abandoned and steeped in mystery. Everyone called it the creepy house, and while most of the neighborhood children dared each other to approach it, I felt an inexplicable pull to discover its secrets. The sun dipped low on the horizon one autumn evening, casting long shadows across the pavement as I wandered closer to the old structure. It loomed ominously, a gothic silhouette against the twilight sky. Its windows, black and hollow, seemed to watch me as I approached, sending a shiver down my spine. I had heard countless stories about the family that had lived there, the strange noises at night, and the sudden disappearance of its last occupant, Mrs. Gwendolyn Wells, a reclusive woman known for her eccentricities and whispered tales of madness. As I stood before the rusty gate, a feeling of both dread and excitement enveloped me. The gate creaked loudly as I pushed it open, an unwelcome sound that echoed into the stillness of the evening. My heart raced, fueled by a mixture of fear and curiosity. I had to know what lay beyond the threshold of that house. The overgrown path leading to the front door was littered with fallen leaves, their crunch underfoot amplifying the silence that surrounded me. I paused, glancing back at the safety of the street. No one was around. I felt as if I had entered a different world, one that was untouched by time and the bustling life of the neighborhood. With a deep breath, I climbed the steps to the porch, which sagged ominously beneath my weight. The wood was warped and rotting, as if protesting my presence. I reached for the doorknob, its surface cold and tarnished, and twisted it slowly. To my surprise, the door swung open with a soft groan, revealing a dark interior filled with shadows. The air inside was stale, thick with dust and the scent of decay. As I stepped over the threshold, the door creaked shut behind me, sealing me in the darkness. My heart raced as I reached for my phone, using its flashlight to illuminate the room. The beam flickered over the faded wallpaper, once vibrant but now dulled and peeling away, revealing the bare wood beneath. I took a tentative step inside, the floorboards creaking underfoot. The living room opened up before me, its furniture covered in white sheets that looked like ghosts waiting to be disturbed. Dust motes danced in the weak beam of light as I explored the space, my pulse quickening with each creak and groan of the house. A large fireplace dominated one wall, its mantel cluttered with odd trinkets and photographs that had long since faded. I picked up one of the frames, brushing away the dust to reveal a family portrait. The faces stared back at me, eyes hauntingly hollow, as if they were still trapped in the past, unable to escape the memory of this house. Suddenly, a soft sound caught my attention, a faint whisper that seemed to emanate from somewhere deep within the house. My breath hitched in my throat as I strained to listen, convinced it was just the wind playing tricks. But then I heard it again, clearer this time. It was a voice, low and barely audible, calling out to me. "Help me!" I felt a chill crawl up my spine, but the urge to uncover the source of the voice was too strong to resist. I moved deeper into the house, my flashlight illuminating a narrow hallway that branched off into several rooms. Each door stood slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of forgotten spaces filled with shadows. I approached the first door on my right, pushing it open to reveal a dimly lit room. It looked like a study, with bookshelves lining the walls, their contents covered in dust. A desk stood in the center, papers scattered across its surface as if someone had left in a hurry. I stepped closer, curiosity piquing as I glanced at the titles of the books, volumes on psychology, the occult, and family history. As I examined the desk, a sudden noise made me jump. It was a loud thump from the room next door, followed by an eerie silence. My heart raced, and for a moment, I considered retreating, but something compelled me to stay. The voice whispered again, urging me onward. In the basement, I swallowed hard, fear and intrigue battling within me. The basement? I hesitated for a moment, contemplating the implications of descending into the darkness below. The stories I had heard echoed in my mind, whispers of secrets buried deep, of the house itself holding memories too terrible to bear. I steeled myself and made my way back to the hallway, my footsteps echoing against the wooden floor. At the end of the hall, I found a door leading down to the basement. It was old and heavy, though it splintered and worn. I hesitated, my hand hovering above the doorknob. A deep breath steadied my nerves, and I turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing a staircase that descended into darkness. I flicked my flashlight on, its beam cutting through the thick shadows as I took my first step down. The air grew cooler, heavy with the scent of mildew and something more acrid. I could feel the weight of the house pressing down around me as I descended, each step echoing ominously. Reaching the bottom, I found myself in a small, dimly lit room filled with old furniture covered in dust. The walls were lined with shelves crammed full of forgotten objects, a jumble of trinkets, family heirlooms, and toys that seemed to belong to another time. My eyes widened as I scanned the room, searching for the source of the voice. Then, I spotted something on the floor, a small, ornate box tucked away in the corner. It looked out of place, untouched by the dust that covered everything else. I knelt down and reached for it, my fingers brushing against its cold surface. As I opened the box, a rush of air escaped, and I could almost hear the house sighing. Inside, I found a collection of old photographs, each one depicting the family that had once lived here. As I flipped through them, I felt an unshakable connection to the past. And then, buried beneath the photos, I found a small diary. Its pages were yellowed and brittle, but the words were still legible. I cannot escape this house. It watches me. It knows my secrets. My heart raced as I read the words. This was Eleanor's voice, her desperate plea for help. The realization struck me with a wave of horror. I was not the first to be drawn into this house, and I might not be the last. I needed to uncover the truth behind the creepy house at the end of the street before it consumed me as it had so many others. With newfound determination, I prepared to delve deeper into the mysteries that lay within these walls, ready to confront whatever haunted this forsaken place. The diary in my hands felt heavier than its physical weight. I could sense that it held secrets I was not yet ready to confront. As I turned the pages cautiously, I could almost hear the echoes of Eleanor's voice resonating within the cramped basement. Each entry revealed more about the life of the woman who had been trapped in this house, a life that was interwoven with fear and isolation. The house is alive. It breathes with me, watches me as I move through its halls. I can feel it growing restless. The whispers have become louder, calling my name. I fear they will take me next. The words sent a shiver down my spine. I could hardly comprehend what she had experienced. With every turn of the page, her desperation became more palpable. She wrote about odd occurrences, objects moving on their own, shadows lurking just beyond her vision, and the suffocating weight of loneliness that pressed down on her heart. I took a moment to absorb this chilling history, my surroundings growing more oppressive with each revelation. I decided to look for any clues that might lead me to understand her fate. I had to know what had happened in this house that had led Eleanor to such despair. Setting the diary aside, I began searching the room. I felt as if the walls themselves were closing in on me, each shelf packed with remnants of a life once lived. The flickering light from my flashlight danced across the surfaces, revealing a series of framed photographs, each one depicting moments of joy that seemed utterly incongruous with the house's current atmosphere. In one image, a young Eleanor smiled brightly, flanked by her family. They stood in the garden that now lay overgrown and wild. Another photo showed her holding a small child, laughter frozen in time. This was the Eleanor I wanted to remember, not the tormented soul scribbling in a diary. What had changed? I continued my search, moving to a dusty old trunk in the corner. Its latch was rusted, but it was not locked. With a firm tug, I opened it and was met with a collection of various items. A collection of children's toys, forgotten clothes, and a faded quilt that smelled of mildew. But underneath it all lay something more sinister, a collection of old newspapers. The headlines were alarming, detailing a series of disappearances in the area, some dating back decades. My stomach churned as I realized that these were not just any disappearances. They were children, all last seen near Maple Street. The most recent article mentioned Eleanor Wells herself, the last sighting of her being years before she vanished from the public eye. Eleanor Wells, a life unraveled, the headline proclaimed, with a photograph of her that matched the one in the trunk. Beneath it, there was a chilling excerpt about how Eleanor's reclusive behavior had raised suspicions. People whispered about her connection to the missing children, although no evidence had ever surfaced to substantiate such claims. The weight of this revelation hung heavily in the air. Was it possible that the very house I stood in was a place of tragedy, a vortex that consumed those who dared to dwell within? The whispers in the walls began to grow louder in my mind, urging me to dig deeper. As I sat in the dim light of the basement, piecing together the fragments of Eleanor's life, a sudden noise jolted me from my thoughts. A faint tapping echoed from above, rhythmic and persistent, as if someone were trying to get my attention. My heart raced. I had been alone in this house, hadn't I? Steeling myself, I rose and climbed back up the staircase, the creaking steps sounding like a warning. As I reached the top, the tapping stopped abruptly. Silence enveloped the house, a heavy silence that felt almost suffocating. I hesitated, my hand hovering above the doorknob. Should I open the door and confront whatever was waiting on the other side? With a deep breath, I turned the knob and pushed the door open. The hallway was still, but the atmosphere had shifted, charged with an energy I couldn't quite place. It felt as though the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for my next move. I stepped into the hall, my flashlight illuminating the walls, revealing the faded floral wallpaper that seemed to pulse in the darkness. The air felt thick, almost electric, as I moved toward the source of the sound. It had come from the room across the hall, the former study. As I entered, the sight that met my eyes caused my heart to plummet. The desk that had been neatly organized before was now in disarray. Papers lay strewn across the floor, some fluttering gently as if stirred by an unseen breeze. But what caught my attention most was the open window, the curtains billowing softly, as if inviting me into the night. I rushed to the window, closing it tightly against the chill that seeped into the room. What had happened here? Had someone been inside while I was in the basement? A wave of fear washed over me, and I glanced around the room, my instincts on high alert. Suddenly, my flashlight beam landed on something unusual, a piece of paper sticking out from beneath the edge of the desk. I knelt down, pulling it free to reveal another note, hastily scrawled. They know. They're coming for me. I can't hide any longer. The handwriting was shaky, frantic. My heart raced as I realized this was not just a note. It was a plea, perhaps from Eleanor herself, or from whoever had taken her place in this haunted house. The implications were staggering. I was not merely exploring a house filled with dust and memories. I was navigating a living nightmare. As I contemplated my next move, the house groaned around me, as if it sensed my fear. I needed to uncover the truth behind these walls and learn what had happened to Eleanor and the others who had vanished. I had come too far to turn back now, but with every step I took deeper into the mysteries of this house, I felt the weight of the unknown pressing heavily upon me. What awaited me in the shadows of this decrepit home? Only time would reveal the horrors that lay hidden behind its doors. The weight of the note in my hand felt like a burden, its words swirling in my mind like a dark cloud. I stood frozen in the study, adrenaline coursing through me, battling the instinct to flee this house that had become a labyrinth of dread. Yet, I couldn't ignore the gnawing curiosity that pulled me deeper into its secrets. What had truly happened to Eleanor, and how was I connected to this unfolding nightmare? I took a deep breath and surveyed the room once more. The disorder suggested urgency someone had left in haste. The scattered papers, once mere remnants of a past life, now felt like breadcrumbs leading me to a larger truth. I knelt down, sifting through the mess, searching for clues that might reveal what Eleanor had uncovered before her disappearance. Among the papers, I found old letters, yellowed with age. The first one caught my eye. It was addressed to Eleanor, penned in elegant script. As I read, my heart sank. Dear Eleanor, I hope this letter finds you well. I must warn you, the others are becoming suspicious. You must be careful. They do not understand what you have seen. The letter hinted at something darker lurking beneath the surface of the mundane. Who were the others? What had Eleanor seen? The questions multiplied as I moved to the next letter, feeling the weight of an impending revelation. Eleanor, I can no longer protect you. The darkness grows stronger, and you are not safe in that house. You must leave before it consumes you. Remember, not all who wander are lost. The finality of the words sent a chill down my spine. It seemed Eleanor was ensnared in something far beyond her control. My eyes darted to the window, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt. I was here alone, caught in a web woven by forces I could not comprehend. Just then, a loud creak echoed through the hallway. My heart raced, and I instinctively turned off my flashlight, plunging the room into darkness. The creaking grew louder, accompanied by a faint whisper that seemed to drift through the air. I strained to listen, but the words were indistinct, mere shadows of sound. With my heart pounding in my chest, I pressed my back against the wall, trying to quell the rising tide of panic. The house was alive, and it was trying to communicate something, an ancient, dreadful message buried in its very bones. Taking a shaky breath, I flicked my flashlight back on, aiming it toward the doorway. The hallway loomed before me, bathed in a sickly yellow light, its edges blurred and distorted. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to escape the oppressive atmosphere that had settled in around me. But I couldn't turn back now, not when I was so close to uncovering the truth. I stepped into the hallway, the beam of light cutting through the gloom. I paused outside the door of the room next to the study, its wooden frame seeming to vibrate with energy. This was where the whispers had originated, and I needed to know what lay inside. As I pushed the door open, a gust of wind rushed past me, extinguishing my flashlight. The darkness enveloped me like a thick shroud, and I fumbled for the switch, my heart pounding in my ears. When the light flickered back to life, I found myself in a room that felt like a forgotten tomb. The walls were lined with shelves of dust-covered books, their spines cracked and faded. In the center of the room stood an ornate mirror, its surface marred by grime. I moved closer, drawn to its reflections, both familiar and foreign. My face stared back at me, but just behind my image, I caught a glimpse of something else, a shadow, fleeting and almost human. "Who's there?" I called, the tremor in my voice betraying my bravado. Silence enveloped me once more, but the weight of the mirror seemed to shift. I stepped back, disoriented. What had I seen? Had it just been a trick of the light, or was the house toying with my mind? I steadied myself, forcing my gaze back to the mirror. It beckoned me, its surface now rippling as though a current flowed beneath. Compelled, I reached out, my fingertips brushing the glass. A jolt of energy surged through me, a connection forged between the past and present. Images flooded my mind. Eleanor, frantic and wide-eyed, standing before this very mirror, tears streaming down her face as she grasped for something, anything, to hold on to. "Help me, please," the memory echoed, vivid and desperate. The plea was not just a memory, it was a call to action. I realized then that Eleanor's spirit was trapped, bound to the house that had consumed her, and I was the unwitting participant in her haunting. Before I could process the revelation, the air around me thickened, and the whisper returned, now clearer. "Find the key. It's the only way." I staggered back, heart racing. The urgency in the voice stirred something deep within me, igniting a determination to uncover the truth. I had to find this key. Eleanor's freedom depended on it, and perhaps my own safety did too. With renewed resolve, I began searching the room, tearing through the dusty tomes and scouring every corner. I could feel time slipping away, the shadows growing longer, darker. The mirror's surface shimmered as if urging me onward, and I searched fervently. As I rummaged through the clutter, I caught sight of a small, ornate box tucked behind a stack of forgotten books. My pulse quickened as I pulled it free, its intricate carvings catching the light. It felt significant, almost alive in my hands. Opening the box, I found an old, rusted key nestled within a velvet lining. My breath hitched in my throat. This had to be it. The key to unlock whatever had been hidden from me. The key that could release Eleanor from her torment. With the key clutched tightly in my hand, I made my way back to the hallway, my heart pounding in rhythm with my footsteps. I could feel the energy of the house shifting, and the whispers grew louder, urging me toward the basement once more. The sealed door awaited me, the barrier between the living and the lost. This was where it would all culminate. The answers, the truth, and perhaps the means to release Eleanor's spirit. The air was thick with anticipation, the walls seeming to pulse with life as I approached. Taking a deep breath, I placed the key in the lock. The sound of the tumblers clicking into place echoed in the silence, a prelude to what lay beyond. I twisted the key, feeling the weight of history shifting, and slowly pushed the door open, ready to confront whatever horrors awaited me in the depths below. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit staircase that spiraled down into the shadows below. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, each breath feeling like an intrusion into the forgotten depths of the house. I hesitated, my heart racing in my chest, but the thought of Eleanor's desperate plea spurred me onward. I had to know what lay hidden in this subterranean chamber. I took a step onto the first stair, the wood groaning beneath my weight. As I descended, the light from the hallway faded, replaced by an oppressive darkness that felt almost sentient. Each step echoed, a reminder of my solitude, but also a call to confront the past that had ensnared both Eleanor and myself. With every inch closer to the bottom, a sense of urgency ignited within me. The stairwell opened into a small room, its walls lined with stone and grime. Flickering light from an old lantern cast eerie shadows, illuminating an array of objects strewn about. Discarded toys, broken furniture, and a collection of framed photographs, their glass cracked and yellowed with age. A heavy silence enveloped the space, broken only by the faint rustle of something in the corner. I approached the photographs, my heart pounding. Each image was a snapshot of lives once vibrant, children playing, families laughing. But one photograph, more worn than the others, caught my attention. It depicted a girl with familiar features, her face framed by cascading curls. It was Eleanor as a child, her smile radiant and carefree. Beneath the photo, a small inscription read, Eleanor, 1987. The date sent a shiver down my spine. This was a glimpse into her past, the life she had once known before being consumed by the shadows. But where were the other family members? Why was this photo alone down here? Suddenly, a soft whisper filled the room, pulling me from my thoughts. Help me. It was her voice, unmistakable and urgent, echoing around me. I spun around, searching for the source, but the room remained still, the shadows dancing in response to my unease. I focused on the lantern, its light flickering as if struggling against an unseen force. A chill ran down my spine, and I sensed that I was not alone. A figure shifted in the corner, a silhouette barely illuminated by the lantern's glow. It was too dark to make out any details, but the presence felt heavy, charged with emotion. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice wavering. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a woman whose eyes mirrored Eleanor's. She looked disheveled and worn, her clothing tattered, but her expression held an intensity that made my breath hitch. "You shouldn't be here," she warned, her voice a whisper filled with urgency. "Eleanor," I breathed, unable to comprehend the apparition before me. "No," she replied sharply. "I'm her mother. You must leave. The house is alive, and it won't let you go." Confusion washed over me. "But I need to find her. She's trapped in here, isn't she?" The woman's expression softened, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You don't understand. The darkness took her, and it will take you too. You must leave before it's too late. Please," I implored, desperation creeping into my voice. "I can't abandon her. I need to know what happened." As if responding to my plea, the lantern flickered violently, and the shadows in the room seemed to swell. The temperature dropped sharply, and a low growl echoed from the depths of the darkness. I could feel the house tremble, as if awakening from a long slumber, its anger palpable. "Run!" Eleanor's mother cried, her face twisting with fear. "It's coming for you." Before I could react, the shadows surged forward, tendrils of darkness reaching out as if to grasp me. I stumbled back, instinct kicking in, and I bolted for the staircase. The chill of the room followed me, a haunting reminder of what I was leaving behind. As I ascended, the shadows clawed at my heels, urging me to turn back. The walls seemed to close in, the staircase narrowing as panic threatened to overwhelm me. I burst through the door at the top, slamming it shut behind me, my heart racing in my chest. I leaned against the door, panting, trying to gather my thoughts. I was back in the study, but the shadows had followed. The atmosphere felt thick with malevolence, and I could hear faint whispers seeping through the cracks, like a chorus of voices yearning to escape. You cannot escape. The voices echoed in my mind, swirling around me. I had awakened something terrible, and it was not going to let me go. Determined, I gripped the key tightly, its cold metal grounding me in reality. I needed to find a way to confront the darkness, to uncover the truth of Eleanor's disappearance. With renewed purpose, I began searching the study for anything that could help, a book, a clue, anything that could reveal the nature of the evil I was up against. As I rifled through the papers on the desk, I stumbled upon a journal, its pages worn and filled with frantic handwriting. It belonged to Eleanor. My heart raced as I flipped through the pages, absorbing her thoughts. I can feel it watching me. The shadows whisper secrets, and I am afraid. I must uncover the truth before it consumes me. With each entry, Eleanor's words grew darker, her fear palpable. She described the things she had seen, the flickering lights, the figures lurking in the corners of her vision. It was as if she had been documenting a descent into madness, a struggle against an unseen force that threatened to engulf her. And then, one entry stood out. The basement is the heart of the house. The key unlocks the truth. My pulse quickened as I realized the key I had found was more than just a means of escape. It was the key to understanding what had happened to her. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way back to the basement door, a sense of dread coiling in my stomach. I had to confront whatever awaited me down there. I had to unlock the truth, if only to free Eleanor's spirit, and perhaps my own. With a deep breath, I turned the key in the lock once more, the tumblers clicking into place. The door creaked open, and I stepped into the darkness, prepared to face the unknown that lay ahead. The shadows whispered around me, but I was no longer afraid. I was ready to uncover the darkness that had consumed Eleanor and the house itself. Stepping through the threshold of the basement, I felt an overwhelming sense of finality wash over me. The darkness enveloped me like a shroud, yet I clung to the beam of my flashlight, its feeble light cutting through the oppressive gloom. Each step forward echoed ominously, the weight of the house's secrets pressing down upon me. As I descended the last few stairs, the lantern flickered to life, illuminating the chamber beyond. The air felt charged, heavy with the emotions trapped within the walls. I noticed the walls were lined with strange markings, scratches and symbols that seemed to tell a story of their own, woven into the very fabric of the house. My heart raced as I focused on the far corner of the room. There, shrouded in shadows, was a large, ornate mirror. Its surface was dark and cracked, but something in its depths seemed to beckon me closer. I approached cautiously, drawn in by a force I couldn't quite understand. The closer I got, the more I felt a familiar presence, a warmth that flickered beneath the surface of the cold stone. I placed my hand against the mirror, the chill biting at my skin, but the moment my fingers made contact, a surge of energy coursed through me. "Eleanor," I called, desperation filling my voice. "If you're here, I need you to show me." The surface of the mirror shimmered, warping as though a veil had been lifted. Images began to coalesce, a flicker of light and shadow revealing a younger Eleanor playing in a sunlit garden, laughing with friends. But then, the laughter faded, replaced by darkness creeping in, consuming the brightness. Suddenly, the images shifted, and I found myself staring into the eyes of Eleanor's mother, her expression a mix of sorrow and warning. "You must leave. The darkness has claimed too many. It hungers for more." I felt a pang of loss. This was the truth of Eleanor's past, her innocence stripped away by the very house I stood in. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to remember every detail of the journal, every word she had written. The basement is the heart of the house. The key unlocks the truth. I turned my attention back to the mirror, focusing on the swirling shadows. "What do I need to do?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the turmoil within me. As if responding to my challenge, the mirror rippled, revealing a scene I hadn't expected. Eleanor stood there, trapped within the reflection, her eyes wide with fear and pleading. "Help me," she screamed, her voice echoing through the chamber. Without thinking, I pressed my palms against the cold glass, the energy surging once more. "I will save you," I shouted, feeling an overwhelming sense of determination. The mirror vibrated, and a low growl emanated from the darkness surrounding me. Suddenly, the room began to shake violently, the shadows swirling and coiling around me like a living thing. I stumbled, barely keeping my footing as the house seemed to react to my presence. It was as if the very walls were trying to repel me, trying to keep the truth buried. "Eleanor, hold on," I yelled, fighting against the darkness. "I'm coming for you." The ground beneath me cracked, revealing a chasm that pulsed with a deep, unsettling energy. I could hear the whispers growing louder, frantic and maddened. "Leave!" they cried, but I refused to listen. With a surge of adrenaline, I stepped closer to the mirror, focusing on Eleanor's terrified face. "I'll break this curse," I declared, channeling every ounce of my will into the glass. "I will not let you be lost in the darkness." The mirror responded violently, shattering into 1,000 fragments that danced in the air like stars. Each shard reflected a different moment, a different memory. Eleanor laughing, her family together, the joy of youth before the shadows crept in. I could feel the energy of the house shift, the malevolence waning. The whispers turned into a cacophony of rage, the house protesting my intrusion. I gritted my teeth, determined not to falter. "You can't have her. You can't take her from me," I roared, my voice drowning out the chaos. The mirror's shards began to fuse, a blinding light emanating from within. I saw Eleanor again, her spirit flickering like a candle in the wind. "Help me," she pleaded, the urgency palpable. I reached out toward the light, and as my fingers brushed against the ethereal energy, a surge of warmth enveloped me. "Together," I whispered, channeling my strength into the light, "we can break free." With a deafening crash, the mirror imploded, sending shards flying in all directions. The darkness recoiled, shrieking in fury as it lost its grip. I felt the energy shift dramatically, a vacuum forming as the house trembled. Eleanor's spirit surged toward me, enveloping me in warmth. In that moment, I felt her presence, a bond formed through the struggles we both faced. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice a gentle caress, and then she vanished into the light. The room erupted in brightness, the shadows dissipating as the oppressive weight lifted. The ground stopped shaking, and I found myself standing alone in the remnants of the basement, breathing heavily, heart pounding. In that moment, I realized the truth. The house was a vessel for pain, a collection of lost souls longing to be free. I had unlocked the door to Eleanor's past, and in doing so, I had released not just her, but the energy that had trapped so many others. As I stepped back into the hallway, the sun was beginning to rise, spilling golden light through the windows. The air felt lighter, and for the first time, the house seemed to breathe freely. I turned back one last time, whispering a silent promise to Eleanor. "You're free now. I won't forget you." As I walked out of the house, the shadows retreated into the corners, no longer menacing, but rather a part of the past. I knew I had changed. The experience would remain etched in my memory, a reminder of the fragility of life and the strength of the bonds we share, even across the veil of the unknown. And as I stepped into the warmth of dawn, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I would carry Eleanor's story with me, a tale of light conquering darkness, of hope emerging from despair. The world outside was waiting, and I was ready to face it, knowing that the past would always be a part of me, but it no longer held the power to bind me. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents.